Are
we on? Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Good afternoon. Today is October the 4th, and today is the 42nd meeting of the 24th Council, and I will call this meeting to order. I believe that the majority of our councilors are present. No one has called to say that they weren't attending. So with that, as you come in, your presence will be recorded. I would like to start today with a moment of silence. And I would like to offer the moment of silence for our balloon fiesta, which was initiated on Saturday morning, in hopes that we have a safe balloon fiesta this year. So with that, if you'll just join me for a moment of silence, counselors. Thank you, counselors. With that, I would like to ask Counselor Bassan if she would lead us in a moment of, in the Pledge of Allegiance in English. Counselor Bassan.
Thank you, Madam President. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Counselor Bassan, and I will read it in Spanish. Juramento a la bandera, jura fidelidad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos. Thank you, counselors. And with that, I would just ask you to bear with me as I read some information into the record. As noted in a press release from our office on Friday, posted on our website, and noted on our published council agenda, this meeting has special procedures and is being held via Zoom video conference. Members of the public, city staff, and the media have the ability to view this meeting live through 4 different platforms: GOV TV on Comcast, Channel 16, the GOV TV website, YouTube, and Zoom webinar. These live streams can be accessed from most smartphones, tablets, or computers. Also, this meeting is closed captioned, and you may enable the closed captioning services on your television or device at this time. For those watching on the live stream, thank you for joining us this afternoon. The video recording of this and all past council meetings is also available for viewing at any time on City Council's website. Council staff is available via telephone if members of the public need assistance finding the videos online. Please call 505-768-3100 for assistance during business hours, which are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. The council is accepting live general public comments today, as well as any written comments. Written comments received by 1 p.m. were distributed to all councilors in advance of today's meeting. And with that, councilors, we will start with our first order of business, which is proclamations and presentations. And I will turn this over to Councilor Pena. Councilor Pena.
Thank you, Madam President. And I just want to let the other councilors know I'm sorry about the delay in getting your sections to read on this proclamation, but I appreciate your willingness to do it on such short notice. I will start with, I think we have a couple of people in the waiting room. We have Mr. Christopher Love, Chris Love, and Alex Luz. Please correct me if I'm wrong on the pronunciation of your name. They're from Mandy's Farm. So with that, I think we will get started on reading the proclamation, and I do not have it in front of me in terms of who's going to read what section of it. So I think we're starting with Councilor Sena.
Thank you, Councilor Pena. Whereas
employment access for individuals with disabilities or inclusive hiring increases financial stability, social inclusion, and meaningful opportunities for success. And whereas recognizing the workforce community and cultural contributions of individuals with disabilities is an essential component of creating truly inclusive communities and work environments. And
whereas embracing inclusive hiring, oh, no, wait, hold on. I got to go back. I'm so sorry. It moved. Whereas embracing inclusive hiring at minimum wage or higher allows individuals with disabilities to participate in and contribute to their community, while also reducing their reliance on government supports. And whereas hiring individuals with disabilities in efforts to create an inclusion workforce improves employee morale, reduces turnover, and increases business efficiency and revenue. And
whereas the City Council recognizes the work of local disability employment providers like Mandy's Farm for their dedication to assisting individuals with developmental disabilities in achieving their goals for living, learning, and working in the community.
And whereas Mandy's Farm works to meet the needs of Albuquerque businesses and disabled community members throughout employment services, through employment services that are offered at no cost to inclusive employers. And whereas the City Council worked with Mandy's Farm in August 2020 to draft and enact R2084 that directed the City of Albuquerque's Office of Equity and Inclusion, Human Resources Department, and the Economic Development Department to collaborate with local disability employment providers to explore opportunities for creating supported employment opportunities among persons with disabilities. And
whereas the City of Albuquerque is committed to developing an inclusive workforce that is representative of all of its citizens and their skills and capacities, be it proclaimed that the council, the governing body of the City of Albuquerque, hereby declare October 8th, 2021 as Inclusive Hiring Day. So with that, if we can bring in Mr. Chris Love, I think we'll start with him. Hey, Chris.
Hi. Hey, how's it going?
Good. Did you want to say anything?
Oh, yes, I really appreciate all you counselors doing this and all the progress that we've made on the bill that you guys passed last year. We're working with the city's HR department, and we are definitely planning on doing an update to you guys and launching the program soon. Thank you guys very much. We will be doing an inclusive hiring day through Mandy's Farm's social media on the 8th, including videos from inclusive employers, employees with disabilities, and local politicians. So thank you guys very much for putting this together, and we definitely appreciate all the support. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Is Alex here as well, or is it just you today?
Oh, unfortunately, it's just me today. Alex is in another meeting.
Oh, okay, that's fine. So thank you, Chris. I don't know if any of the counselors have any questions, but I just wanted to say, I just really appreciate Chris and all his work. You know, as it states in the proclamation, it's National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And the theme for this year is America's Recovery Powered by Inclusion, which reflects the importance of ensuring that people with disabilities have full access to employment and community involvement during the national recovery. And I just want to say, I think most of you know, I have a brother who has developmental disabilities, and he has utilized supportive services and is embarking on his 20th year of working at Walmart. And he would not be able to do it without the support and services that are provided through agencies like Mandy's Farm. So he's getting ready. I'm trying to convince him to retire. He's kind of saying, nah, I don't think so. But but again, thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone at Mandy's Farm. I appreciate it. And we'll talk to you soon. We look forward to the update on what the city is doing. And I'm just real appreciative of everybody at the city who's working with them. You know, when we bring people and include people with disabilities, it helps us to understand too some of the needs and voids that we're not paying attention to, whether it's spacing, whether it's processes. I mean, they're really, really, you know, value added, and it's going to be value added to the city of Albuquerque.
Well, thank you guys for everything. We really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you, sir, for being with us this afternoon. And thank you, Counselor Pena. I'd like to just thank you for raising our awareness on Mandy's Farms. Thank you so much. Any other counselors wish to speak? It doesn't appear so. Okay, with that, we are going to move on, counselors. We have a presentation from APD Staffing, Acting Commander Roger Legender. Is that right? The way you say it? Regarding APD Staffing. I hope I said your name properly. Are you there? There you are. Budget conference room. Thank you. And if you could just correct me on your pronunciation of your name, please.
Hello, Madam President. My name is Roger Legendre. I'm an acting commander with the Albuquerque Police Department, and I'm currently overseeing the Special Services Division.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
All right. So I want to start off that these numbers are going to be as of the 27th of September, and they're the most recent numbers. We do update our numbers weekly, so there is some fluidity to our numbers because we do have people who are separating and whatnot from our department on a weekly basis, and that is something that is normal, but it does change on a weekly basis. If we can go to the next slide. Here it's going to show our numbers showing as a full sworn count, those that are sworn officers. We do not track our civilian employees through our operations review section. We have 900 officers at this time. And there's a breakdown below of 1 chief, 1 superintendent, 1 deputy superintendent, 5 deputy chiefs, 1 chief of staff, 13 commanders. The chief of staff is actually the rank of commander, 6 deputy commanders, 46 lieutenants, 115 sergeants, 657 patrolmen first class, 51 patrolmen second class, and 3 sworn CSAs. And on October 22nd, we're going to have an additional 47 patrolmen second classes added to our ranks. If we can go to the next slide. This is going to be a breakdown with a pie chart of where our personnel are assigned. We have our accountability bureau, which is going to encompass three individuals. You're going to have your deputy chief, commander, and I believe it's an officer. You have our field services bureau that's broken down to 465 of our personnel. Our investigative bureau at 156. Management Services and Support Bureau at 41. The Office of the Superintendent has 102, and our Special Operations Bureau has 116. A majority of our officers are going to be located in the Field Services Bureau. As you can see below, we have 53% of them there. Next slide, please. In the Field Services Bureau, we want to break it down to each area command. As we can see, the area commands, when we start looking at officers, we're looking for calls for service and the critical type incident calls that are going to generate and need the most amount of officers. In that, we have our most officers assigned to the Southeast and the Northeast area command. In the Northeast, we have 85. Southeast, we have 95 currently. We take a look at the Valley area command. We have 82. Southwest, we have 66. Northwest, 63. Foothills 74. Now that's not a total representation of all the officers that could have bid there. There are some vacancies within the field right now based on separations. With them completely full, you're going to look at the Northeast and Southeast as being more equal in numbers. We take a look at the investigative bureau. We have the Criminal Investigations Division with 71, and then we have the Investigative Services Division at 85. And that's going to account for our detectives and whatnot. Next slide, please. When we take a look at the Office of Superintendent, that's going to encompass the Academy, Crisis Intervention Division, IA Force, IA Professional Standards Division, and the Professional Integrity Division. Currently, the Academy has 33 personnel. Crisis Intervention Division has 21. IA Force has 36. IA Professional Standards has 11. And the Professional Integrity Division has one commander. Next slide, please. Our Special Operations Bureau is going to consist of the Metro Traffic Division, Special Operations Division, and the Special Services Division. The Metro Traffic Division currently has 37 sworn officers. The Special Operations Division has 30, and the Special Services Division has 49. Now, it's important to remember that with the Special Services Division, that encompasses operations review. So when we have officers that are on military orders extended for long periods of time, or any sort of issues where they're going to be out of the field or out of service for an extended amount of time, often they'll be assigned to the operations review, which also makes it where it appears there may be additional officers within Special Services Division, but they're placeholders at that time. Management and Support Services Bureau isn't going to be included in this, as there's some safety sensitive positions within that bureau that we're restricted from being able to speak about regarding federal rules and whatnot. Next slide, please. So one of the important facts of APD, it's not just our recruiting and how many people we're bringing into the department, but also how many separations we're seeing by month. And this chart is going to be able to show that. This goes back to June of 2019 until September of 2021. And we saw a pretty large uptick if we take a look at June of 2021 to now, where we're seeing the amount of retirements exponentially go up. We're seeing on average of about 12 to 13 retirements alone. But we're also looking at, if we look at that orange column next to the retirements, that's going to be our resignations. And we see those have exponentially gone up as well as of May of 2021 and throughout. We're seeing on average of about 6 to 7 resignations a month. That's where we're at on that. Terminations, they're kind of in line. They're up and down throughout the couple years, but we're sitting at 6 for the year now. Next slide, please. This is going to show total separations by month and the trend that we're seeing. And it kind of echoes the last chart I had shown. We've seen an uptick in the separations as of May, June of this year. Next slide, please. All right, total separations by year. If we look at 2020, we had 83. And in years past history, this is pretty common to see anywhere from 75, 85 separations in a year. This was as of January 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2020. During that time, we had 48 retired officers and 25 resignations and 10 terminations. This year, we're currently at 118 as the 27th of September, 70 total retirees. 9 of those were rehires that retired. A few years back, we had a pay increase, which drawn several officers to come back to the profession. They suspended their retirement to get their top 3 years to retire. That's what that number attributes to, the 9. 9 of them have retired now. They've hit their top 3. We've also seen 42 resignations. That's going to be a lot higher than last year. What we're seeing from working in operations review, we often see them as one of the last steps before they leave the department, actually separate. And a lot of them are moving out of state, other job opportunities, and for better pay, closer to family, etc. We hear a lot of them are leaving the profession altogether, which is a little abnormal. So, and then we've had 6 terminations year to date. Next slide, please. Now, as far as bringing people into our department, We're currently, we have the 124th Academy in session. This shows 48 cadets. I understand as of this past weekend, we have 47 cadets, and they will be coming to graduate October 22nd. So we'll be including them into our ranks as well. C&M Class 6 has 16 cadets. They will be starting with APD, their session with APD, December 17th. The 27th lateral class is filling. We're trying to get 20 into that. Currently, we have 3 in backgrounds and 11 interested applicants. We continue to push those measures through the billboards we have up and through our internet as far as using social media and going to events and whatnot in order to try to get additional laterals into our department. The 125th Academy. We're pushing as a goal of 70 cadets. This class is supposed to start December of 2021. Currently, we are at 27 seated, 34 in backgrounds, 239 interested applicants. As of this past weekend, there was a testing. We do have more seated at this point. We still have roughly about 34 in backgrounds. Right now, we're looking at about 50 to 60 to be able to seat by December, based on the timelines we have to do with DPS. And then our 126th Academy, we're also setting a goal of 70 cadets, and that would be beginning May of 2022. Next slide, please. We don't want to forget our police service aides. That is a large funnel for our recruiting efforts to become cadets one day. We'd like to get them in the door when they're 18, 19, 20 years old, and hopefully they become officers. We're currently sitting at 41 PSAs, and that's going to include the latest class, which was the 39th class. However, the 39th class is not solo yet. They're currently on the job training with our field training PSAs. We do have 17 of them, and as a total, we'll have 41. We do want to get another class going as soon as possible, as soon as December. As soon as we get 20 police service aid applicants through the process and seated, we'll begin that class. Currently, we have 3 in backgrounds and 18 interested applicants. That's it for my presentation. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to do my best to answer those questions.
Thank you, counselors. I'm going to open it to questions. I see Counselor Gibson's hand. And I don't have the screen.
I'll do that.
Okay, so Counselor Gibson, go ahead while I work on my technical issue here.
Thank you. Thank you. So I appreciate this update. It's real clear and very straightforward. So I appreciate that. My question is about the lateral. You said that there are 20 cadets in a lateral class. And so when I think of lateral, I think of already sworn officers moving in from another law enforcement agency. Is that a correct definition of lateral and the way we're using it in this report?
Madam President, Councilor Gibson, you are correct. We use cadets for the new hires that come in. However, laterals are sworn. My presentation does show 20 cadets. That should be 20 laterals, those who have been sworn already and are now going through the process through APD.
Gotcha. Thank you for that clarification. And where did these people come from?
Our laterals come from different areas.
Were they in-state or out-of-state?
Quite a bit of them do come from in-state. I know our last one had individuals that had come from state police and whatnot. We are looking at law enforcement academies that are within the region right now. And that's where our Google ads go out to, trying to encourage them to come to APD. Law enforcement academies, they can be brought into our department as laterals. And often they're self-sponsored. And they go through a law enforcement academy and they don't have employment set up for after they're done with their academy. So that's one of our recruiting efforts that we actually give forth in trying to get more laterals involved. But right now, the ones that we are seeing, they tend to come from in-state.
Okay, thank you very much. And I am glad that you are expanding your methodologies in finding new cadets or laterals. I'm glad for that. I think the city should use the same techniques that other large employers use, you know, to go to the colleges and the universities. It only makes sense, particularly for law enforcement officers. There's a University of Michigan study that clearly shows, even with a little bit of college education, there's a significant difference in the use of force and problems of that nature. So I'm glad that you all are doing that a little bit more. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Councilor Gibson. I do have my raise hand feature working now, so I will go in order of the individuals. I think Councilor Bassan, then Councilor Sena, and then Councilor Davis. So Councilor Bassan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. This presentation, I feel like, is something we've been looking for quite a while. And so thank you for that. I think it's very clear. I think it answers a lot of questions on departments and Field Services Bureau and everything. So a couple questions is, how will this, how is APD expecting this to change, especially with the area command breakdowns because of the latest bid? I mean, is it going to generally, do we have any, can I ask that?
As far as Madam President and Councilor Bassan, absolutely. We bid once a year. And one of the things that changed this past year is that we went to a combination of 8-hour shifts and 10-hour shifts. So day shift is comprised of 2 8-hour units and 1 10-hour, same with swing shift. And then our graveyard units are all 10-hour shifts. Now we did that in order to, based on the last staffing report that we had seen that had come out per City Council study, the staffing study that came out, I think that was December of 2020. It was recommended 8s would be giving us the most amount of coverage and whatnot. So we did go to those 8s, but that combination of 10s, because also it shows that overlap time was very important. There is another staffing study that is going on based on the last one being outdated. And I believe that staffing study is going to be able to provide us with much more answers as to the allocation of resources throughout the city.
Thank you. Can we expect to see, for example, you said Northeast and Southeast are some of the highest for the officers that are at those commands. Is it anticipated that they're going to change drastically, or,
without having done the analysis and whatnot, but having been on the department for 17 years, my understanding is that the Northeast and Southeast tend to have the highest call volume, and I don't anticipate to see much change, but we really got to wait for that staffing report and that analysis that they're going to be able to show us.
Fair enough. Thank you. And one more question, Madam President. Do we know approximately how many officers are on the extended leave or military leave, or, how many are we missing because they're not able to come to APD and work right now?
Actually give you that answer. If we're able to, with your permission, if we can circle back around, I can have that answer here shortly.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Bassan. I will move on to Councilor Sena. And in the meantime, I would just ask the commander to forward that study to all the councilors so that they would have that in their inbox. Councilor Sena.
Thank you, Madam President. Commander Legendry, I guess Councilor Bassan kind of touched on this. I'm just looking at the slide that says divisional staffing by bureau. What bid was that? Was this most recent bid, or was this a previous bid?
Can you repeat the question, please?
The slide that states divisional staffing by bureau, specifically the Field Service Bureau, where it breaks it down by the area command. What bid was that? And also, does this also include sergeants and lieutenants that's within the Field Service Bureau?
Yes, this is the current bid, and this is actually going to account for, the supervision as well.
Okay. Interesting. And you had touched on also in terms of the staffing study, because I'm looking at the two area commands that are in my district, and with the Northwest, I know that you were stating that it's based off of call volume, but is that the largest geographical area command for the city?
I believe Northwest is the largest geographic area command for the city.
And you stated previously that the number of officers really pertains to the call volume for the area command. Is that right?
That's correct.
So, I'm grateful that we're not having as many calls, of course, but in terms of geography, geographically speaking, I should say, if an immediate or urgent call occurs, we have, in a slight difference, and I'm trying to equate for the supervisor's roles as well. That's quite a low number for the largest geography, in my view. Of course, I'm going to always advocate it for that. And when, as you said, there's another study being conducted that's a little bit more updated, but I would really stress that also be factored in. Officers that are having to respond to the West Side Emergency Housing Center is pretty far away from the rest of the district. And it would take a few officers out there. And then if another call came out to, say, Coors and Ouray, then that's still a lot of time to travel. So I hope that that's just a consideration, since it's such a large geography, that it equates for a lot of resources expended to one call and limited resources when, other officers, which I'm sure you know. Okay, well, I think that's the only questions as I have right now. And I'm sure I'll wait for other counselors as they ask their questions as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Sena. We will move on to Counselor Davis, and then Counselor Pena also has her hand up.
Thanks, Madam President. Commander Legendre, thank you so much for doing this. And I know, and I appreciate you and I've had a chance to talk a little bit about staffing offline, but I just wanted to pivot from current staffing to future staffing really quickly. And I was trying to catch these in my own notes, so please correct me if I didn't catch correctly. I think you demonstrated that we had so far have just north of 110 something, 112 or 118 retirements so far for the year, or terminations, departures. How many actual cadets do we currently have scheduled for this year to make those replacements? I was trying to do the math and I couldn't quite keep up.
So in taking a look at what we have now, we had 50, I believe it was 41 that had graduated earlier this year. We have picked up between deputy commander, commander type ranks, an additional 6. And then we have on October 22nd, we'll have 47 graduating, hopefully. That would put us at a total of 98 by the end of the year.
Thank you, Commander. And I think what I wanted to point here is, assuming there aren't going to be any more retirements or terminations by the end of the year, and I realize those schedules are pretty easy to predict at this point. It concerns me that we've unfortunately lost more, or planning to lose more this year, it sounds like, than we have currently in the pipeline. And so I think the concern that we all have that we need more officers, and I want to commend the team at the Academy and recruiting, to fill that many classes and get that many folks in is no small accomplishment. I came to New Mexico as a lateral police officer, and I remember the paperwork that was involved just for that, not to mention all the extra things that the city of Albuquerque now requires. So kudos to that. But what I'm seeing is that we're going to maintain this sort of status quo level of staffing for at least another year, given the higher number of retirements, which are double what we expected. Is that a fair assumption based on the math now, or is there some intervening factor that we're missing?
Based on what I have right now, yeah, it's we are below than we have more separations than we do have coming in. We have to continue pushing with our cadet classes. We're trying to get to those 70 some odd numbers when we have a cadet class, and hopefully with trying to provide as much as we can as a department interest for those laterals. We're hoping that makes up that difference. But it's an ongoing effort. It's a nonstop effort, and you know, that for police work in general, it's not anything that it's unique to APD. This is something that we're seeing statewide. And speaking to the director of DPS, we have less sworn officers in New Mexico than we do this year than we did in years past. So it's not anything new to New Mexico. It's not anything new to the nation. We still have to, as a recruiting unit, we're looking at other ways who we can get interested in with as far as laterals and whatnot, and trying to get that interest into our department. And it's an ongoing effort.
Commander, thank you. And Madam President, thank you. I do appreciate that. No, and I think, and I'm going to ask Mr. Padilla there with you in the conference room, maybe to help me for a future follow-up, Madam President. Mr. Padilla, one of the things we did in the budget, I think maybe 2 years ago, and certainly renewed it again last year, was that $500,000 for hard to recruit positions. I know it included some extra bonuses, some commercials, advertising, et cetera. I wonder if you could help us from the administration side get some data on whether that's been effective or not. And the reason I ask is because as we get to the end of the year and start looking at budget, I really think we need to take a serious look at very strategic ways that we can support and enhance our recruiting efforts, because as it stands, we're going to have fewer officers on the street next year than we do today. And that really concerns us all. And I know it does the administration as well. Thank you, Madam President, for making time for that presentation.
Madam President and Councilor Davis, yes, we'll get back to you with that information. We're happy to do that.
Thanks.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Padilla. Thank you, Councilor Davis. We will move to Councilor Pena.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Similar questions around what everyone's asking. I don't see the chief there, but there might be some folks from APD who have been working on this. Is that, you know, one of the issues that I had early on when we were talking about recruitment was some of the barriers to becoming an officer, especially, of course, barriers for people of color or just youth in general, about our state statute where it had marijuana was one of the reasons that if you had smoked marijuana, you actually couldn't become an officer, right? It's part of the whole recruitment process. And I'm just wondering, did that state statute go away now with the legalization, or is it still there? Is it something that we need to approach Santa Fe regarding?
That is something I believe we're looking into, because I understand that Santa Fe, for their police department, they've limited the amount of time someone has smoked marijuana to the time that they are able to apply for their department. I'm not sure what the chief's stance is at this time on that rule for our department and our standard of our city.
Yeah, because this ends up becoming a huge barrier. I mean, I've brought this up before, and I know there was a task force in APD that was supposed to go up to the state to look at doing away with this. This was even prior to the legalization, you know, so it kind of concerns me that, you know, we're legalizing marijuana, and then officers can become an officer if they've smoked weed in the last 3 years. So I definitely think this needs to be a priority for APD to make sure we get that off the books. And then, of course, you know, those are things, you know, people of color, people have had, you know, I've had friends, family who've tried to get in, and you know, that's one of the questions that comes up. And I know a lot of young men and women who have tried to get into APD and were unsuccessful, and they sought out other paths for their lives just because of this. And then today we're facing, you know, we're legalizing it. So to me, it's just tragic, right? And then the other thing is that our calls for service, you know, I think this is kind of an antiquated method of how we do this process. I know Councilor Sena was kind of bewildered by it, but I know that, you know, officers, and tell me, correct me if I'm wrong, but officers are distributed based on calls for service, right? And I was told this before, this was in my community advocacy days, is that some areas tend to call, maybe like the Northeast Heights, they'll call Southeast, wherever there's more officers, they call because of a whole variety of stuff. Sometimes marginalized communities are kind of used to some of these things happening in their community, so they don't call, right? I mean, I get tons and tons of constituent calls, and they tell me they heard gunshots last night, they heard this, that. I say, did you call 911 or 242 cops? And they tell me no. So I really wish that we could look at additional ways on how we distribute officers to areas, especially in more marginalized communities. So so I guess my question is that's correct? You still use that same method, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so I'd love for that to be looked at. And then I really appreciate that you guys are trying to do recruitment on the front end. I think, when we're doing all these things and we're in fear of losing officers, we give these incentives and it only keeps them for a little while. So making the investment in the front end, I think, is absolutely the way we need to go. But we need to start with eliminating any kind of state statute that are barriers for becoming an officer. And then lastly, the Southwest area, I was trying to do the math like Counselor Davis, and I think I got a little lost too, is 66 officers, which I think is way too little for the level of, I feel, of officers that we need in the area. But the way I did the math is I did, times 7, there's 168 hours in 1 week's time. In a 10-hour shift, divide that by 10 hours, there's 17 shifts. So 17 shifts, that's throughout the day. I'm looking at that divided by the officers as 4 officers on any given shift, and wondering, does that include those same 4 officers if someone's on vacation, jury duty, ill? It seems as though 4 officers on a given beat is, boy. And geographically, as Counselor Sena said, I think District 3 is either we'll debate it later, bigger or pretty darn close to her size.
Madam President and Counselor Pena, I just to advise, there's in the Southwest, and just like any other area command, there's actually there's overlap. So for any given day, especially our slower days, when you're talking about your Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, there's never a standalone team. So our teams are comprised of 5 officers and a sergeant per team. Some teams on swing shift have 6 officers and a sergeant. There's overlap on our busy days, our Friday, Saturday, Sundays. There's always overlap. So you're looking at anywhere from 10 to 13 officers in any given area at that time. That's why we went to the 8s and the 10s on graveyard, is so we could have that overlap time as well, so they weren't back to back. But at any given time, minimal, you should have that 10 to 13 officers in an area command.
Madam Chair and Councilor Pena, this is Isaac Padilla. There's this chart that actually APD gave us, and it kind of shows how that overlap goes, and that's hour by hour each day. What I can do is I can have them redo that chart again with the most updated figures, and then I can get that to you so you can get a better idea of how staffing changes throughout the day and gives an explanation of the overlap.
Okay. And then what I'd like to do is, I'd like to have a follow-up on the state statute to see if there's, I'd like this to be a legislative priority for the Santa Fe, for APD and perhaps council this coming year. And then I would love to, whether Southwest or whatever other counselors, I would definitely love to really get a breakdown of my, it's never my, the district I serve's breakdown of officers and how many are on a beat, because even 5 on one beat with such a large district just seems like we need to maybe look at a redistribution of officers and where they're at. But anyway, I will stop there, because if not, I'll go on and on. Thank you, Madam President.
Madam President and Councilor Pena, I'll go ahead and reach out to legal to have them do some research on state law and we'll get back to you. And then, like I said, we'll have APD put together that chart so that you can see hour by hour and how it's broken down.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Sena. I'm Counselor Pena. I'm looking at Counselor Sena and then Counselor Benton. And Counselor Sena, would you mind if Counselor Benton went first because he hasn't spoken? And then we'll come back to you. Thank you. Counselor Benton.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Councilor Sena. So just some quick questions. You can keep them short if you want, Commander, no problem. What's the average class dropout rate from our cadet classes, including CNM? I mean, over the last 5 years or whatever, once they're accepted.
Let me, I'm looking that up right now. I can answer that. We often see about a 15% attrition rate out of our academy classes. So
And does that include CNM?
that does include CNM, sir.
Okay.
So
All
we
right,
started CNM just for reference. We try to get 25 people into that CNM class.
Yeah.
And even right from the beginning, we see challenges with backgrounds because there's certain timelines we must face with DPS where the medical has to be done 30 days before an academy beginning. We actually had 25 people seated for CNM, but after they went through their medical and they had to do their physical test out, I think we dropped down to about 19 or 18 it was. And we lost, I believe, one during this time. So we're sitting at 17, one of those two. Yeah, so we're 17, but we do see a lot of people fall out in those final steps of the background process.
Yeah.
And then we're stuck with that.
Yeah, I see. Okay. And then how's it work? When the bids go out, do people bid for the traffic unit but in and of itself?
No, sir. They actually test for the traffic unit. That's one of the specialized units that they would put out an opening, and those officers who are interested, they could test for that.
Okay. And I thought I heard that they were going to test, eventually had a goal of testing all officers for bicycles. Was that a urban myth?
That's not anything that I'm familiar with, sir.
Okay, fine. And then the Valley Command's numbers, I'm assuming, include the downtown public safety district.
Actually, they do not, sir. Well, the Valley, it does include the downtown public safety district, but when we're looking at these numbers, they don't include our PRT officers, which we have 46 PRT officers designated, allocated throughout the city. So there's actually additional officers in each area command. When I did the presentation, I did strictly those officers taking calls for service. And that's what I believe everybody was wanting to see. But
Right.
So we have an additional 46 PRT throughout the city.
I think it's important to emphasize that to the general public because PRT is really important. And yeah, they're not arresting somebody right at that time, but they are really looking into things that need to be looked into and trends and so forth, correct?
Yes, sir. They're going to be the proactive response team. And you got one of these teams in every area command. They're very responsive to the communities, the businesses within each area, and they try to tackle those long-term problems, which ultimately will drive down calls for service, hopefully. That way our field officers taking calls for service are able, we drop those calls for service so they have better response times and are able to be more available to citizens.
Yeah, and not to disparage the issue of geographic lack of density, I guess, if you will, large geographic areas. But, places with high density and older street grids and all of that sort also present unique challenges. And so if we're going to start getting into that game, I don't think we ought to just start doing arithmetic on acreage. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councillor Benton. We will go back to Councillor Sena.
Thank you, Madam President. I think overall, whether it's geography or calls, I think our main concern is we need more officers. for certain calls, of course. But overall, and I think each counselor kind of alluded to this and why I had to raise my hand to ask additional questions is, you know, we talked about those that are retiring, and really a lot of those officers, you know, have a wealth of knowledge that of course we need to retain for some of our younger officers and new officers. So what's being done for retention? And on top of that, what's being done for more inclusive hiring? It was touched upon earlier by Councilor Pena, which, you know, we also just read the proclamation in terms of more inclusive hiring as well. I know within OEI, they're also doing a study as to those that didn't accept their offer in the end when it comes to specific communities. So I guess those are just my main questions, is just what's being done for retention and what's being done for more inclusive hiring.
Madam President and Councilor Sena, as far as retention right now, I'm not sure what efforts we're putting forth towards a whole lot of retention. I do understand that it is being looked into so we can make sure that we're keeping these officers. As far as recruitment benefits for a lateral officer, they can receive up to a $15,000 sign-on bonus at this time. And for cadets, new hires, they're looking at a $5,000 sign-on bonus. That's to bring them in the door right now. And then we also talk about all the perks of the job as an officer. They do have that take-home car privilege. They do have the benefits that the city provides. There's a lot of benefits just inherently about being a police officer in and of itself that we do discuss with those new hires, and even the laterals that may not have those sort of privileges where they're coming from. But retention is definitely an issue that I understand is on the table and being considered.
Madam Chair, Councilor Sena, we'll go ahead and get some information about that. We'll send that to the counselors about what we're doing for retention.
And my question on more inclusive hiring.
And yes, and also more inclusive hiring. We'll get back to you with that information.
Thank you. And thank you, counselors, for asking all of those questions. I actually have a couple of questions myself. And I don't know if you have the answers to these this evening, but if you don't, then if you could just get back to me. What is the average length of service time prior to retirement? Is it, I mean, what, I know that in the ordinance, in the state law, it says that, you know, they can work a certain amount of time, but what are you seeing in terms of individuals staying with the department?
So, Madam President, my understanding, most of our officers that are retiring, all of them, in fact, they are on a 20-year plan, and I'd say many of them are leaving after 20 years. We also do see people who have the ability to buy that year of airtime or their military time on top of that. That's not as common that I'm seeing, and that's just based on what I'm seeing as my position in operations review. But quite a bit of individuals are leaving as they approach their 20-year mark. That'll change here in the near future. Well, not near future, but that changed to a 25-year retirement, I believe, in 2012 or 13.
Yes.
So they have to go do their 25 years. But right now, we do have quite a bit of officers that are reaching their 20 or just beyond it, that we still have them. They still have the love for the job and they want to be here.
So is there still an incentive pay for them to stay longer if they, do we still offer that benefit?
It's just retention.
If they stay longer than 20 years?
We're talking about the longevity?
Longevity.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do have the longevity pay for those officers, and they do max that out, I believe, at year 20. After year 20, their retention pay, that longevity money, it maxes out.
Madam President, also, we've been with the MCI project, we had heard about retention, and that was one of the events that, or one of the breakouts that we discussed. And we have some ideas that we've been meeting with legislators about to help us with some retention. So what in that report, when I report back to Councilor Sen and the rest of the councilors, we'll include the information from that as well. So
okay, I would really very much like to see that. longevity program, and if there's ways that, we may want to look at that and incentivize it a little more, because, we certainly, after the training and they stay 20 years, they can't do the return to work any longer. So, obviously they probably go work somewhere else because they're still probably pretty young. So, I really think that that's an area that we should be looking at to maybe enhance. And then my second question is with regard to once an officer graduates from the academy, what is the length of time that you've seen, maybe on average, or if you've even looked at it, with regard to how long do they stay with the department before they leave and go somewhere else? Have you guys looked at that to see if there is any kind of a trend there?
Madam President, we don't have data to show a trend, but just observing those that are resigning, it does seem that we do have more now than before resigning at those years between that 5th to 10th year. You're starting to see people go. Some of the things that I have heard is, you talk about Texas, they still have a 20-year retirement. So some people don't feel that they're losing out on any time. They could go to Texas and do 20 years and still get a retirement. Whereas here, they're still doing their 20 years. So those are some of the things I have heard from those that are leaving that have about that amount of time on. So, but we don't have a study. We don't have anything to show, any data to show any trends.
Okay. Also, with regard to the private sector, and this is really for the administration, is in the past, and this was years ago, many years ago, there were some incentives that the private sector offered to police officers and public safety with regard to, lower interest loans, incentives to buy houses and that sort of thing. And I realize we have a housing shortage, but has anyone looked or talked with any of the chambers regarding what incentives maybe the private sector could help the city with to offer our officers, some sort of, I know some of the credit unions had done that in the past. And as I said, that was many years ago, but if we're having, we need to work it from every angle. And I think it'd be, in our best interest to sit down maybe with some of the chambers and see what we could offer and what we could look at to maybe help our public safety officers stay in the community.
Madam President, thank you for suggesting that. What I can do is I can get back to you. We'll schedule a meeting and we'll reach out to some of the private sector and I can give you an update on what we're doing and
I'd be happy to help and to meet with you all if you do reach out to them to talk about some of the, because I do know that some of these programs were offered in the past. And as I said, it was a long time ago, but it's still, they were programs that worked and helped to keep people in the community. So it's definitely something worthwhile. Okay, I don't see any other counselors with their hands raised. So with that, I'm going to thank you all for your presentation. As I asked earlier, if you would send that to all of the counselors so that they can have that in their email box, we would appreciate that. And counselors, if you have any other questions, you can forward those to the commander or to Mr. Padilla. And we are going to move on to our item number 4, which is economic development discussion. And tonight there is none. So with that, we are going to move to our general public comments. Mr. Moya, how many people do we have? We have 2 people signed up to speak this evening, counselors. So with that, we will move on to those individuals. Mr. Moya. And before we go, I think we're going to let them into the chat room. And while he does that, I'm going to read some information into the record for those of you who are joining us tonight to provide live public comment. We welcome you. We also received written comments that were distributed to the counselors in advance of today's meeting. Members of the public will be able to address the council if they have signed up for live public comment per the instructions published on the agenda and on our website on Friday. Speakers will be moved into the meeting room 2 at a time. They will remain muted with their camera off until they are called upon to speak, at which point they can turn on their camera, unmute themselves, and will have 1.5 minutes to provide comments to the city council. After that, they will again be muted and return to be an attendee of the Zoom webinar. These are the current ground rules. Each participant has 1.5 minutes to present. Comments are to be addressed to the counselors only through the council president. Any disruptive conduct will result in removal from the Zoom webinar. Mr. Moya, would you like to go ahead?
Thank you, Madam President. Our first speaker is Cordero Thomas. Mr. Thomas, please feel free to turn your video on, unmute yourself, and your 1.5 minutes will begin when you start speaking.
Thank you, Council. Councilor Pena, thank you for your comments on police distribution in marginalized community. And Councilor Cynthia, thank you for your comments about incentives to keep the officers that we do have. My comment is a little bit off topic from that though. I was at the September 20th council meeting. I brought up monoclonal antibody treatments as an alternative to COVID-19 vaccines. Governor Ron DeSantis, actually, he's the governor of Florida, and he assigned Joseph Lepedo as the new Surgeon General. And according to this scientist, the new Surgeon General of Florida, scientists are misrepresenting information about vaccines. I told you at the last meeting about Dr. Whalen, who was a doctor. She caught COVID-19. She went and got the monoclonal antibody treatments. And within 8 hours, she was totally fine. Within 3 days, all of her aches and fatigues had decreased by 90-something% or something. GOP governors nationwide are drawing up incentives to block vaccine passports, which is really confusing because we thought that the government as a whole was really advising that that we as citizens of the U.S. take the vaccine. So now there seems to be a split there. So that's just that's confusing. So just be aware of the people who will come forward about alternative treatments to COVID-19 other than vaccines. That'll be children, that'll be parents here coming up soon.
Thank you, sir. Your time is up.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Tara Reid. Ms. Reid, please feel free to turn your video on, unmute yourself, and your time will begin when you start speaking.
Good afternoon, Council President Borrego and councilors. Many of you know that in my former role as the Vision Zero coordinator at the city, I helped develop the Mobile Speed Enforcement Ordinance 069 that you will be discussing today. I just wanted to, as a private citizen and resident of Albuquerque, speak in support of that ordinance, which is part of the Vision Zero action plan. And it's just one of the many ways that the city can work to better improve traffic safety. The action plan really focuses on the need to redesign our roads to slow drivers and prioritize safety and human life over vehicle speed and throughput. And there are some great projects that all of you have worked on that help move us in the direction of a safer transportation system. And I hope that those projects continue to happen in our community, really to change the dangerous driving culture here. But meanwhile, people continue to be killed in high-speed crashes. And I think that mobile speed enforcement can complement this other work by extending the city's ability to enforce safe speeds. From my experience, the staff working on this program are being very thoughtful about how to prioritize mobile speed enforcement in the places where dangerous crashes occur in order to maximize the impact on safety. And I also just want to close by saying that I think that this program should continue to center equity, both in the penalties that might be assessed through the program, but also in the rollout of the program. I think that education and engagement in a mobile speed enforcement program are going to be really important. But I also just want to note that a lot of the communities that are already overburdened by dangerous crashes are also those same communities that feel overburdened by policing. And I hope that a mobile speed enforcement program in Albuquerque really keeps that in mind and is trying to address speed and safety for folks in our community. So thank you very much.
Thank you, madam. Those are the only two speakers. Oh, Councilor Benton, I didn't see your hand up. Go ahead.
I had a question for Ms. Reid, if we can get her back on.
I'm here, Councilor.
Ms. Reid, I just want to say, or now I would publicly just say, Tara, I just want to thank you for all the work you've done. I mean, not just on this ordinance, but your advocacy and passion for fair access to all of our public ways for all people enabled of all abilities and means and income and all of the above. I really appreciate that time with you. I hope we can get somebody as good as you to replace you as our coordinator. And I know that that's probably in the works, and I got my fingers crossed that it'll be somebody as thoughtful and passionate as you are. So thanks.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Councilor Benton. I don't see any other hands up. So with that, councilors, those were the only two individuals signed up to speak this evening. So we are going to move on to question and answer period. And before we start our question and answer period, I just asked the administration maybe at our next meeting if they would consider bringing someone in to discuss monoclonal antibody treatment and the question that was raised. So that would be something that I would request from the administration at our next meeting. With that, I'm going to move on to Councilor Jones, who has a question, and then Councilor Davis. And those are the only two requests that I received this evening from councilors. Of course, that doesn't preclude you from asking questions later on, councilors. So Councilor Jones.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you for calling on me. Just want to make it clear that there are a few questions that are all involving the same topic, and I hope you would indulge me to ask those, because we all know that if they're all about this stadium, which is an exciting prospect. However, due to the scale of activities associated with the stadium, I am very curious about the parking being proposed, or in this case, not proposed. We're not seeing what is going to be happening with parking. So this is a very large stadium, which is nice if it works and it goes up, but it doesn't seem feasible that the city would develop a stadium with no parking. So I would like to know several questions, if I could just ask a few and then ask someone from the administration to respond. Madam President, is there a plan to find the money for a structure or structures? Obviously, it's hard to say without knowing where the stadium is going to be, but so far the money for New Mexico United is 10 million, 8 million from the state, 50 million from the bond, which totals 68 million. The study estimate of 65 to 70 did not include parking. Just parking structures generally cost 10 million for 500 cars. How many cars are we anticipating? How are we going to do it? And how will we protect the neighborhoods from having their streets blocked with fans parking in the area? Blocking their driveways, the multitude of cars in the narrow streets. Are we going to redo the streets and widen them so that the cars can get through, depending, of course, on if we build parking structures, where we're going to build them? And if we don't build parking structures, what is the plan for parking? And how will, another question, how will the noise associated with the games and other events be mitigated? And we're looking at residential neighborhoods, which can kind of be a problem when you have multitude fans in an outdoor stadium. And then, of course, hard to answer now, but in the future, hopefully, what will be the access route to the site? Will we go through Central, which we'd love to have people on Central, but stacking up on Central, does that give us more business? Does it harm business? Last and final question, Madam President, what is a realistic final cost for this project? Underlining and putting in red, realistic final cost for this project. Thank you, Madam President. If I could have someone for the administration answer those questions.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Mr. Rael?
Good evening, Madam President and members of the council. Good evening, Councillor Jones. Let me begin by, first, I think you somewhat answered the question yourself, and that is that, as we all know, the study only indicated the cost associated with the actual facility itself. Until we bid the project and get the information, obviously these are estimates, number one. Number two is that the site that where this facility is going to be finally constructed is still up for conversation with the community. We had said that the consultant had made 2 recommendations, which both were in the downtown area in general, along the railroad tracks, but that we would have a open conversation with the community if the voters approved the $50 million that we have put on the bond question. So if it's built, for example, at the at the university area by Isotopes Park, in some of those areas, best I can tell, there's a fairly amount of parking there that would not necessarily necessitate construction of a facility or a parking structure, but potentially a joint use agreement with the university to use parking there, or their parking, if you will, spaces that are there. Concurrently, if it's built on the west side, there's a lot of land that's available out there that would be also an opportunity to build surface parking, et cetera. If it relates to the 2 sites that are downtown, well, here's a couple of conclusions that our consultants have provided in the report. One was public transportation is an important piece of the success of this project if it is going to be built in the core of the city. Would be utilizing, for example, the Rail Runner and using the Rail Runner parking lots along the corridor from Santa Fe all the way to Belen to provide parking for folks, and using that form of transportation to bring it into an urban area like either the west side of the railroad tracks, or even, quite frankly, even the east side of the railroad tracks, should those 2 sites be the ultimate decision by the council, quite frankly. But also keep in mind that we have a lot of space, a lot of parking lots in the downtown core. Many of these games, in fact, probably 90% or 95% of the games happen after 5 o'clock. A lot of those parking lots are vacant because of folks leaving the downtown core and heading home in the evenings. And look, it's not unusual for big cities to have people walk 3 or 4 or 5 blocks to get to a parking spot to walk to this facility. As a matter of fact, it probably is to an advantage to the community, because along the walk, you create more opportunities with restaurants and other opportunities for folks to enjoy dinner and or a beverage before they go into the facility, et cetera. And it helps create the dynamic economic development that, quite frankly, would be helpful, I believe, to both either whether it's the east side or the west side of the railroad tracks in the downtown core. So we would plan on using all of those parking facilities. And look, like any project of this magnitude, there is a certain amount of information in the study that talks about offsite infrastructure. Keep in mind, we know that we're going to do some additional work with the rail trail, for example, if it is in that area by the rail yards, to create walking spaces. We know we've already invested a lot of money into water and sewer lines and roadway facilities around that site. And so there's going to be some improvements that need to be done. But at the end of the day, it really is about creating, well, actually providing some information to the community when the decision is made about what site makes the most sense. And then providing that decision to the council for finally making that determination. And look, the interesting things about both of the sites that are in the downtown core that the study recommended are that you do have the 2 one-ways that provide a great opportunity to move a lot of traffic in and out of the downtown, plus Central, plus you have Cesar Chavez to the south, and you have Broadway, and you have a lot of other major roadways that connect to these sites. But I will tell you that I think that we have to look at all those decisions when you're evaluating and making a determination of where the site's going to be and taking those into consideration. So the other last point maybe is the real cost of the project. Until a decision is made on the site, I wouldn't want to give you a number that is unrealistic as it relates to the project. We know what is the estimates based on the consultant's work, and what they've said would be a ballpark number, depending on what other amenities we want to add to the facility, or quite frankly, or potentially maybe amenities we want to take away from the facility, and that we don't want to build 12,000 seats. Maybe we decide that we only want to build 10, or we want to build 8. All of those have factors in the project. And then I would just add to the council and to those in the public, when we renovated, for example, the Isotopes Park, we had an estimate that it was going to cost somewhere between $25 and $30 million to build that facility. When the voters approved the $10 million, and when we negotiated an agreement with the ownership group, we were only able to get in $25 million for that project. And we built the project to the budget that we had. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to be really work with United if the voters approve this, and get a project that we can all be proud of, but stay within the budget that's allocated for the project. And so I think, again, but until we decide what site or where in the city we build this, I think it'd be really premature for me to give you a specific number other than to tell you what the consultants have provided us. And these are consultants that build these facilities all over the country. I'm comfortable with their estimates, and but that's where we are right now with in terms of the parking, the transportation, and the facility costs.
Councilor Jones.
Thank you. Thank you for let me talk again. Mr. Real, you are a very good spokesperson for the administration, and I appreciate that. However, we're talking about the vacant lots. The majority of those vacant lots are owned privately. Will they allow us to do this? A majority or a good number of the parking structures are privately owned. The city doesn't own that many. And will people really, let's get real here, depending on where the stadium is, how far will they walk prior to our revitalizing the area and making it safe and comfortable to walk in? A lot of questions that are unanswered, and I know you don't have the answers. I just want to make it very clear that this is a project that, in my small little bit of history in real estate and development, these are the questions that make or break a development. One needs to know the answers. One needs to know a very close guess of the costs before we proceed. And I would hope that the administration will have enough foresight to show the voters of the city of Albuquerque what we are really talking cost-wise, time-wise, and location before this is finalized. Madam President, thank you for the time. And Mr. Rael, again, you are a very good spokesman for the administration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Jones. I don't see any other hands raised regarding this issue. So with, Councilor Davis. Councilor Davis.
Oh, not on that issue, ma'am. I was just
Oh,
line
okay.
up.
I was going to call on you next, Counselor Davis. You have an economic development question.
Thank you, Madam President. It's not a question, more of a kudos. I see that our interim or new director, Mr. Laura, is around. Hey, Director, good to see you, and thank you. I want to say thanks. When we do good things in the city, I think we ought to spend some time to at least acknowledge it, and I want to acknowledge you and your team. As I understand, Mr. Laura, a new round of those small business grant checks have started to go out again. Is that correct, Madam President?
Madam President, Councilor Davis, yes, you are correct, and thank you for letting us know. We have been getting a lot of questions on those. We were able to fund a significant portion of our applications this past Friday, and so we're very happy. We do have an overwhelming amount of applications, and so we are continuing to review applications. We will have another distribution on Friday, October the 22nd. So if your constituencies, your small business owners haven't heard back yet, we're still reviewing those applications, and we should have a notice to them somewhere by the end of this month as well. And so there's still some applications that are being reviewed and that can still be funded.
Madam President and Mr. Laura, thank you so much. And I just want to tell the quick story to say, Madam President, Mr. Director Laura knows this, but I know his folks spent a lot of time going through these applications as they've come in. There are hundreds of new ones. And this is the second or third time they've done this now, working long hours to get it done. But on a personal level in my district, I had two small Asian-owned businesses who had a problem completing the application through the normal processes. They worked with the Economic Development Department to get some language help, and worked with my office to be sure they could get some language help to complete those applications. And I got a beautiful text message the other day from two of our business owners who were crying because they got their checks at just the right time for them, as their business season usually slows down because they're summer businesses. And really was that the city was able to step up, and the director's team were able to do that. And I know that's happening on a daily basis in our city as new folks are getting approved and they're applying. But we haven't talked about it in a while. I hadn't thought about it in a while until I got that message. And Director, I want to say thank you to you and your whole team. There's not many folks in your office to do that, and we ought to say thank you when they do a great job. So thank you, and thanks to the administration for working on that and moving those forward.
Thank you, Councilor Davis, for bringing that to our attention. And thank you, Director Laura. I also want to just compliment you on the transition that you have made with Cynthia Jaramillo leaving. It's a big lift to get these loans out, and you guys have done it and also to Ms. Jaramillo in a very professional way, and I appreciate that very much. We look forward, and I see that Director Varela is also on the line, and we look forward to those business licenses coming on board, especially as new businesses, small businesses are opening, and we hope to process those quickly and efficiently. So thank you so much for that. With that, I don't have any other questions from our counselors. So we are going to move on to our journal. Counselor Gibson.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Madam Chair, or Madam President. We'll move approval of the September 30th or September 20th, I'm sorry, journal.
Thank you, Counselor Gibson. I'll second your motion, and you have several other seconds online. And with that, if there are no questions, we will move on to the vote. Ms. Ortega, are you on? There you are. Thank you.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
Counselor Benton.
Yes.
Counselor Davis.
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes.
Counselor Harris.
Yes.
Thank you. Counselor Jones.
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Sena.
Yes.
Counselor Borrego.
Yes.
Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, counselors. That we will move on to item number 7, which is communications and introductions. Are there any changes to the letter of introduction? I will offer the first change, counselors. I move that the rules be suspended for the purpose of placing OC 45 on today's agenda for action. OC 45 is a staff recommendation to appoint Mr. Jesse Crawford to the Civilian Police Oversight Agency Board. And I would just remind counselors that we need 2/3 of our counselors present to vote on this particular appointment. Counselor Sena, is that a second? Thank you, Counselor Sena. Any questions, counselors? If not, Ms. Ortega?
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis, Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor, oh, thank you, there you are. Counselor Gibson,
Yes.
Counselor Harris, Counselor Harris, Counselor Harris,
Counselor Harris, I don't.
Yes.
thank you. Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
9-0.
Thank you, counselors. That motion passes. We will move on to our next order of business, and I would ask Counselor Benton or Counselor Sena if one of them would like to present this. Counselor Sena?
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the rules be suspended for the purpose of placing R205 on today's agenda for action. R205 is acknowledging and recognizing the Albuquerque Indian School Cemetery at 4-H Park as a historical and sacred burial site, acknowledging the historical and ongoing intergenerational trauma experienced by Native American individuals, families, and tribal nations as a result of Indian boarding schools policies, and committing to work with tribal nations and local Native Americans towards reconciliation and healing.
And I see a second from Counselor Benton, and I would also second that. Counselors, I would also remind us that we need 2/3 of our counselors present to vote on this in order for it to pass. So if there are no questions, counselors, we will move on to a vote. I don't see any questions, so Ms. Ortega.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson,
Yes.
Counselor Harris,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yeah.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
9-0.
Thank you, counselors. That motion passes. So we will move back to Counselor Gibson. Counselor Gibson.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I make a motion to remove OC 21-42 from the letter of introduction. OC 42 is the appointment of Mr. Jared Robert Vanderdusen to the Accountability in Government Oversight Committee.
Thank you, Counselor. And you have a second from Counselor Bassan. I too would second that motion. Are there any questions? If not, we need a vote. Ms. Ortega.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Madam Clerk, could you just restate the motion? This is to withdraw the item. Is that correct?
to
Yes.
remove OC 42 from the letter of introduction. So yes.
I'm sorry,
essentially
yes, to
withdrawing.
remove. I vote yes to remove. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Gibson,
Yes.
Counselor Harris,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yeah.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
9-0.
Thank you, counselors. That motion passes on a 9-0 vote. Counselor Gibson, I'll go back to you.
Thank you. I move approval of the letter of introduction.
Thank you, Counselor. I'll second that. You also have a second from Counselor Sena. Ms. Ortega for the vote.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson,
Yes.
Counselor Harris,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
9-0.
Thank you, counselors. That concludes our letter of introduction. I will move on to item number 8, which is reports of committee. Counselor Bassan.
Thank you, Madam President. The Finance and Government Operations Committee met on Monday, September 27th, and reports out the following items. In the matter of EC 431, that it be approved and be acted upon at the meeting at which it was reported. In the matter of EC 432 and 433, that they be approved. In the matter of EC 434, 435, and 436, that receipt be noted. In the matter of R 190, 194, 199, and 200, that they do pass. In the matter of R 198, that it do pass as substituted and be acted upon at the meeting at which it is reported. In the matter of R201, that it do pass and be acted upon at the meeting at which it is reported. I make a motion to accept the committee report.
Thank you, Councillor Bassan. You have a second from Councillor Sena. Any questions? If not, we'll move on to the vote. Ms. Ortega.
Councillor Bassan,
Yes.
Councillor Benton,
Yes.
Councillor Davis,
Yes.
Councillor Gibson,
Yes.
Councillor Harris,
Yes.
Councillor Jones,
Yes.
Councillor Pena. Councillor Pena,
Yes.
thank you. Councillor Sena.
Yes.
Councillor Borrego,
Yes.
9-0.
Thank you, councillors. That motion passes on a 9-0 vote. We will move on to Councillor Sena.
Thank you, Madam President. The Public Safety Committee met on Tuesday, September 28th and reports out the following item. In the matter of EC 428, that it be approved. I make a motion to accept the committee report.
Thank you, Councillor Sena, and you have a second from Councillor Bassan. Any questions? If not, we will move to the vote. Ms. Ortega.
Councillor Bassan,
Yes.
Councillor Benton,
Yes.
Councillor Davis,
Yes.
Councillor Gibson,
Yes.
Councillor Harris,
Yes.
Councillor Jones,
Yes.
Councillor Pena,
Yes.
Councillor Sena.
Yes.
Councillor Borrego,
Yes.
9-0.
Thank you, councillors. With that, we will move on to our deferrals and withdrawals at this time. Councillors, are there any deferrals or withdrawals at the time? Councillor Pena. Councillor Pena? If not, I will go ahead and read it into the record. Councillor Pena, would you like to present this?
Yes, sorry about that. R182 is establishing the corridor improvements for 118th Street from 140 to Dennis Chavez Boulevard as a priority for the City of Albuquerque funding processes. I move a deferral until November 3rd.
Thank you, Councillor Pena. I'll second that. And there's also a couple of other seconds. We will move on to a vote. Ms. Ortega.
Councillor Bassan,
Yes.
Councillor Benton. Councillor
Yes.
Benton, thank you. Councillor Davis,
Yes.
Councillor Gibson,
Yes.
Councillor Harris,
Yes.
Councillor Jones,
Yes.
Councillor Pena,
Yes.
Councillor Sena.
Yes.
Councillor Borrego,
Yes.
9-0.
Thank you, councillors. That motion passes on a 9-0 vote. The next item is floor substitute M11. The City of Albuquerque reaffirms its strong commitment to end the drivers of crime, including criminal firearm use and recidivism. I move a deferral until October 18th. And councillors, I just tell you that we are working with APD on this and we have not completed our work. Thank you, Councillor Sena, for that second. Ms. Ortega.
Councillor Bassan,
Yes.
Councillor Benton,
Yes.
Councillor Davis,
Yes.
Councillor Gibson,
Yes.
Councillor Harris,
Yes.
Councillor Jones,
Yes.
Councillor Pena,
Yes.
Councillor Sena,
Yes.
Councillor Borrego,
Yes.
9-0 on the deferral.
Thank you, councillors, for that deferral. We will move on to item number 9, which is our consent agenda. Are there any changes to the consent agenda this evening, councillors? Okay, I'm going to just read very quickly into the record. Councillor Benton, you had a question?
No, I want to vote for the consent agenda, Madam President, but I just want to give a shout out to Director Simon and other councilors that are co-sponsoring this, as well as a really good group of grant applications that we have on the consent. So thanks for Director Simon and his proactive attitude.
Yes, he's great. Thank you for that, Councillor Benton, and for recognizing our staff. I'm going to read very quickly just a short bit of information into the record for the individuals on tonight's consent agenda who are being appointed to serve on a border commission and who may be watching from home. We thank you for your willingness to serve. So with that, I will move to Councillor Gibson. Councillor Gibson.
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson, and I see a second from Councillor Sena. Ms. Ortega.
Councillor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson,
Yes.
Counselor Harris,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes. 9-0. Thank you, counselors. We will move on to item number 11, announcements. Counselor Benton.
Madam President, I can't find my script offhand in my iPad. If somebody else could make that
Counselor
announcement.
Benton, I will read that into the record for you.
Thank you.
There is a committee on guidelines for negotiations meeting scheduled for tomorrow, October 5th at 3 p.m. via Zoom video conference. Thank you for that information, Counselor Benton. Counselor Sena.
The Public Safety Committee meeting scheduled for Tuesday, October 12th was canceled.
Thank you, Counselor Sena. Counselor Jones.
Thank you, Madam President. There will be a land use planning and zoning committee meeting on Wednesday, October 13th at 3 p.m. via Zoom video conference.
Thank you, Counselor Jones. That concludes our announcements, counselors. We will move on to our public hearing. AC 21-12, Frank Comfort, Laurelwood Neighborhood Association appeals the zoning hearing examiner. And I will move to our recent hire, our new attorney, Julia Caldone. Is that the way you say that? Couladone. Great name. Good evening, Ms. Couladone. It's great to meet you and great to see you for the first time.
Good evening. It's great to be here. Thank you, Madam President.
Are there any questions of counselors from Ms. Couladone? Counselor Gibson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. I wonder if Ms. Couladone wouldn't mind just kind of giving us a summary.
Absolutely.
Madam President, Counselor Gibson, yes. The issue in this appeal is whether a conditional use permit should be granted for a drive-through facility located at 1901 Ladera Drive Northwest. The zoning hearing examiner determined that the use should be approved with the condition that a mandatory traffic impact study be completed prior to any further development approvals from the city, which then may be used as a basis to require mitigation of traffic that is generated by the drive-through use. The Laurelwood Neighborhood Association appealed the decision of the ZHE to the City Council, arguing that the conditional use should be denied because a traffic impact study should have been completed before the ZHE's approval. Council referred this appeal to its land use hearing officer, who recommends that the appeal be denied and that the ZHE be affirmed and that the conditional use permit be approved with the mandatory traffic impact study condition. The site at issue encompasses about 1.5 acres of currently vacant land located at 1901 Ladera Drive, which is at the northeast corner of Unser and Ladera. The property is currently zoned MXL, which pursuant to the November 2020 IDO, a restaurant as a primary use is a permissive use, and a drive-through or drive-up facility is a conditional accessory use in this zone. The site is presently vacant, but the conditional use permit application proposes the drive-through to support a restaurant on the site. The ZHE approved the conditional use application for the drive-through, but it imposed a number of conditions on the approval, which relevant to this appeal is condition 3, which states that further development approvals are conditioned on that mandatory traffic impact study. The Appellant Neighborhood Association argues that the ZHE erred by not requiring the impact study prior. At the ZHE proceeding, the appellant produced a 2014 traffic impact study regarding the nearby Heritage Marketplace development, which is located on the southeast corner of Unser and Ladera, directly across Ladera from the site at issue. And although this is inapplicable to the present development at issue, the appellant utilized the 2014 traffic impact study to show that traffic in the area is already heavily overburdened, and a drive-up restaurant in general will produce nearly double the amount of automobile trips than would a restaurant without a drive-up. And so the appellant requests that the City Council overturn the ZHE. The LUHO, however, determined that the ZHE should be affirmed and that the conditional use should be approved subject to the conditions imposed by the ZHE. Specifically, the LUHO determined that the ZHE recognized that the proposed drive-through will create material adverse impacts to the roadway system, but the ZHE appropriately provided a mandatory manner of mitigating those impacts by requiring the applicants to perform a traffic impact study for their drive-through use, which per the IDO, the ZHE may impose conditions on an approval to mitigate negative impacts. The LUHO found this requirement to be the most appropriate, practical, and objective way to address traffic by handing over the specialized traffic issues to the city's experts. And the LUHO determined that this qualifies as sufficient mitigation under the IDO. Accordingly, the LUHO finds that the ZHE did not abuse his discretion or otherwise err in applying the IDO to the facts presented, and therefore the LUHO recommends that the appeal be denied and the ZHE be affirmed and the conditional use permit be approved with conditions. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. We do have several questions for you. Councillor Sena and then Councillor Benton.
Thank you for that, Madam President. And I just appreciate Ms. Couladon's summary there. I know that she and I had some clarifying questions in reading the recommendations. And the issue for me is that the ZHE, and in the write-up, it says it's somewhat ill-defined, did in fact find that the drive-up will create material adverse impacts to the road. This is why they're producing the recommendation of having the traffic impact study be conducted. But there's also there needs to be additional clarification, at least in my view, when it comes to traffic engineering and the recommendation of a TIS, and what, I guess, clarifying information when it comes to the material adverse impact of the road, whether that's necessary for the applicant that is putting in for this conditional use. I think that this needs some more information and some work. And so, I think it would be prudent to entertain a full hearing on this matter, just to clarify some of that information. But of course, I know that there's other counselors here that are asking for more questions or clarifications. So I'm going to leave it at that for now.
Thank you, Councillor Sena. Councillor Benson.
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, I'm inclined to hear this case. It seems pretty convoluted. It seems that it has a lot to do with just the standard procedures under the DPM for ordering a traffic study and so forth, which I understand. But the ZHE seems to have inserted themselves somewhat into it with this requirement of an ex post facto traffic engineering study. And this is a conditional use approval, which the front end question is, will it or will it not harm the nearby property owners and residents and public? And I find it unusual to say, well, for technical reasons, because I realize that the appeal, correct me if I'm wrong, the appeal is really about a technicality that the appellant's demand was for a traffic study in advance of the hearing with the ZHE. And the problem with that is, what is the precedent being set by that? Because, you know, everybody thinks there should be a traffic study for project X that's near them. That, you know, that would be untenable from an administrative standpoint. But I do think there's a concern here, and I would like to accept it and hear it. And a remedy might be to go back and continue to talk about how we evaluate such a thing, because it does create a traffic impact for the immediate area. You know, it's some traffic impact, and the ZHE acknowledged that, and most people would, that you're putting a drive-up window in an area with existing traffic issues. So, you know, I think it's worth hearing it, but I realize that it's kind of messy, because I think the appellant sort of appealed based on the wrong thing in some way, and not through any fault of their own, but just through not complete understanding of the intricacies of the DPM and these type of approvals. But I would move to accept the appeal for the purposes of trying to get a better understanding of what went wrong here.
Thank you, Counselor. We will.
Or if something went wrong, I'm not even saying something went wrong, for a better understanding for the council.
Thank you, Counselor. We will keep that motion on the table. I have two other counselors that would like to speak, or actually I had three. I have Counselor Jones, Counselor Bassan, and Counselor Harris, and in that order. Is there a second for Counselor Benton's motion? Counselor Sena, is that a second?
Madam President, yeah, can I ask Chris to clarify that motion? Counselor Benton, are you rejecting the LUHO recommendations, or are you?
That's what he's doing, actually.
I think this would be to accept the appeal for a hearing.
Madam President, Councilor Benton, I think your intent is clear to me, but with respect to what the IDO contemplates, your motion should be in the form of accepting or rejecting the LUHO recommendation, with the rejection resulting in the full appeal that you're seeking. So when you say you're accepting the appeal, I think that could be interpreted ambiguously as to whether or not you intend to approve the appeal today, which I don't think is your intent.
Okay. Wasn't it the question accept or reject?
Yes, sir.
So I'm saying accept, correct? Because I want to hear the case.
If you're saying accept, you're suggesting that you want to accept the LUHO recommendation, in which case you would not hear the case. So you want to reject the LUHO recommendation.
Thank you for that clarification. And Madam President, I changed my motion, if I'm allowed to do that now.
You are, Counselor. Would you like to leave your motion on the table, and we can hear from the other three counselors that had some questions prior to your motion?
Well, I'm changing my motion, so I just want to make that clear.
Understood.
Madam President, can I ask Counselor Benton, that's changing your motion to reject the LUHO recommendation that would grant a full hearing. In that case, I will second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the floor, and we had three counselors that had their hands up to speak before that motion was placed on the table. So I'm going to go to those three counselors. Counselor Jones, Counselor Bassan, and Counselor Harris. Counselor Jones?
Thank you, Madam President. I think it's interesting that if we accept this, we're in a situation where we are basically saying, which is the argument from the appellate, that every time something new is built, that it affects the flow, it affects the neighborhood, it affects things. Well, of course it does. Whether it's a piece of pull out something that was already there and build something new, or build something in a piece of vacant land, as this is, knowing full well that vacant land eventually gets built on. I think what we're doing here is just prolonging something. It's for us to say and allow this another appeal because we're saying it affects the existing properties. It does. That's what building new things do. That's when we remodel old things. It's what it happens. I think this is ill-placed, and I will be voting against Councilor Benton's motion. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Jones. We will move to Councilor Bassan and then to Councilor Harris.
Thank you, Madam President. In the reading of these documents, in the briefings that we've had with council staff, I was confused at first earlier today and even this weekend, but it's been clarified that my concern was if we're going to have the ZHE post actively, I guess, recommend for a traffic study to be completed. I wanted to make sure we weren't saying we're okay with a traffic study being completed and then we get all these results back and the property owner gets all these results back that ends up without any kind of enforcement after that. But it was, I've been informed since then that then it's up to the traffic and engineering department and any other permits that need to be obtained in the building and the changing of this. It's up to the discretion of the department whether or not they want to impose anything from the current traffic study that would be used. And if I'm wrong, please let me know, Ms. Kuludon. But I again feel like we're in an appeal where we're supposed to be voting on fraudulent, capricious, or neglectful. I think those are the three findings. And I do not see how it can be argued that the zone hearing examiner or the LUHO acted that way.
Thank you, Councilor Bassan. Councilor Harris.
Yes, just the last appeals, I've kind of all come the same way that it's a very high standard. I think abuse of discretion might have been what Councilor Bassan was looking for. But I mean, there's lots of evidence in the record that would support the LUHO. And I just think that Albuquerque, one reason why we're having some of the issues that we're having is has a reputation as an anti-business place. It takes so long and so expensive just to develop anything. And the neighborhood has had their due process. They've had lots of opportunities, and has some very capable people look at this and think about it very carefully. And it seems to me that the appellant hasn't met that high burden. That some of the arguments, again, from people who have represented places nearby, and it's sort of, these, because we're elected officials acting like judges, I think sometimes sort of the concerns of the neighborhoods seem to get mixed in, and policy seems to get mixed in to the very narrow question of whether or not this should abuse discretion at the level. So I'm going to vote against the pending motion.
Thank you, Councilor Harris. There are no other councilors with their hands raised. So we will move back to the motion that's on the floor proposed by Councilor Benton to reject the LUHO recommendation. Councilor Benton. Councilor Benton, you're muted.
To clarify, my apologies, and thanks to Mr. Melendres, who understood where I was coming from, but had made the wrong motion. So here's the thing. I think there's reason to believe that the ZHE erred, not that he did anything fraudulent, because of the not supported by evidence clause. All right. And his decision included an unprecedented type of traffic study, and seems to me procedurally to have been the wrong approach to the question. And that's the reason I think we ought to rehear it. I don't disagree with some of the statements that were made. Seemingly the appellant, I'm not sure exactly how they decided to do what they did in the way they put this forward. But I think it's worth looking at and talking about this whole thing of ex post facto. This is what the ZHE did. Ex post facto traffic analysis that is going to do what? Make them take out the drive up lane? A project of this small size, which is by standards is a small size, still has a traffic impact. And I disagree with Councilor Jones in that it's unique in that sense because it's about a drive-up lane in an area with a lot of traffic. And that was what the whole discussion was about. And that's what the ZHE, I think he was rightly trying to figure out the path forward. But to me, I'm concerned about the path forward that proceeded from that. And what are we really going to find out after they build the drive-up lane? That's my understanding. Could you correct me if I'm wrong, Julia?
Yes, thank you, Madam President, Councilor Benton. So the traffic impact study would take place prior to any drive-through getting built at the site. So the intention being that the developer pays for the traffic impact study to be done. And then, for example, when the application is in front of the traffic engineer before signing off to let the actual physical development move forward, he or she will look at that and say, I'm signing off on this project or not, but you need to do these mitigation steps that were outlined in the traffic impact study before you can actually move forward. So it wouldn't be the drive-through getting built and then sort of after the fact realizing that the traffic is going to be something that needs to be corrected.
So Madam President and Ms. Kuludan, so really this is about an argument over whether it should have been required before or after the ZHE hearing. This is where this began, right?
That's correct.
And is that solely what the LUHO was looking at?
Yes, that was the LUHO's analysis of whether it was appropriate for the ZHE to require this condition after the fact. And if I may just add, the IDO and the DPM do not require a traffic impact study be completed in every circumstance unless certain conditions are triggered or thresholds are met, which did not occur here. And in fact, because that is not a requirement of the IDO and the DPM, if the ZHE were to require a traffic impact study prior to the application being submitted and reviewed, that would be contrary to what the IDO lays out.
Thank you. Thank you. Madam President, I'm going to withdraw my motion.
We had a motion on the floor that has now been withdrawn, councilors. Councilor Gibson, I think you were the second, or Councilor Senna, you were the second. I guess you'll withdraw that as well. Your second.
I would not withdraw that second. However, I do think it's important to continue this discussion, or at least as to why I originally supported that motion.
Councilor Senna, you can remake the motion if you so choose.
I will remake that motion.
Thank you, Councilor Senna, and I will second that motion. And we have a couple of councilors waiting in the wings to speak. Councilor Harris, Councilor Jones, and then we'll go back to you, Councilor Senna.
Thank you, Madam President. So I'd like to ask Julia a question. We had a chat before this, sort of giving, and is my understanding correct that this was sort of an accommodation that was made or offered by the developer here?
Madam President, Councilor Harris, in the ZHE's written decision, it is noted that the applicant proposed to take steps to mitigate any material adverse impact, namely to condition further development approvals on providing a traffic impact study.
And thank you for that. And so it seems that we've heard, our legal team has made an analysis that it would have been proper to require a traffic study before the application. And if we are now saying the traffic study was improper because it was after the fact, well, now we're punishing a developer for making accommodations in a neighborhood. So, you know, my position hasn't changed.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Jones, Councillor Sena.
Thank you, Madam President. Again, our city has these issues over and over, and I don't believe it's because of a specific project being built. Too many times it's because people in vacant land, beside vacant land, consider it to be their own playground and never to be developed because they don't want somebody beside them or someone's home there or someone's business there. And I think that ZHE gave great explanation. It's been studied, it has been appealed. We've gone through the processes. Again, I would support the ZHE's recommendation. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Sena.
Thank you, Madam President. And, you know, for me, why I remade that motion and why it was important for me to at least have a full hearing is just to understand in that, from my understanding, the traffic engineering submitted an email to state that there was no traffic impacts, and yet ZHE is also saying that there would create material adverse impacts to the road system, and that's why they kind of met in the middle, which of course I appreciate, especially when it comes to offering a traffic impact study, but that's why, you know, to hear and understand, at least from traffic engineering standpoint, their recommendations, as well as understanding the ZHE's recommendations of a TIS, the traffic impact study, to be produced. And I understand, and I think Ms. Caledon, you know, clarified that, of course, the IDO does not require you to have one prior, but for me, it's also understanding that through the conditional use that, you know, it's up to the person that's applying for the conditional use to produce no harm is going to be done to the neighborhood. And because there's question back and forth as to what harm would be done based off of traffic. And I know that that's, you know, my point in having a full hearing is to understand that better, between either the ZHE to provide that information as well as traffic engineering. So in some ways it does speak to what Councillor Benton was speaking to, but also, you know, for me, I saw that it is at least prudent for us that if it feels, at least as I'm reading it, how the person that's applying for the conditional use is applying that there's no harm to be done to the neighborhoods. I think it's kind of up to debate whether the ZHE is putting in that it's going to create material adverse impacts to the road system, and yet traffic engineering is stating something else. And for me, I'd like to have more information as to why traffic engineering made that statement.
Thank you, Councillor Sena. So with that, councillors, we have a motion and a second on the floor. I think I will move to a vote, and if that motion doesn't pass, then we will go back and look for another motion. Ms. Ortega.
Councillor Bassan.
No.
Councillor Benton.
No.
Councillor Davis.
No.
Councillor Gibson.
No.
Councillor Harris.
No.
Councillor Jones.
No.
Councillor Pena.
Yes.
Councillor Sena.
Yes.
Councillor Borrego.
Yes.
Motion fails on a 3-6 vote.
Okay, councillors, so we will move to another motion. Is there anyone so inclined? It looks like Councillor Jones and Councillor Harris. Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion to affirm the ZHE's opinion.
Councillor, you have a motion and a second. Councillor Harris, can I?
That's
is
a
that
second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to affirm, to accept the LUHO recommendations and findings. Is that your motion, Councillor Jones?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Is there any discussion? If not, councillors, we will move to a vote.
Councillor Bassan.
Yes.
Councillor Benton.
Yes.
Councillor Davis.
Yes.
Counselor Gibson,
Yes.
Counselor Harris,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
No.
Counselor Sena,
No.
Counselor Borrego.
No.
Motion passes on a 6-3 vote.
Thank you, counselors. That concludes our public hearing this evening. And with that, we will move to our next order of business, which is approvals, which is item number 13 on your agenda. This is OC-45. There is a staff recommendation to appoint Mr. Jesse Crawford to the Civilian Police Oversight Agency Board. I will move confirmation, and I believe that most counselors had an opportunity to meet with Mr. Crawford. Do I have a second? I have a second from Counselor Harris. Counselor Harris, is that a second?
No, I also have a question. Is Mr. Crawford here?
Yes, he is.
I would
And
just like to ask him if he's going to do the training.
Can we move him into the chat room, please? He is in the chat room, Counselor Harris. You may go ahead.
Thank
Good
you.
evening, sir.
So there's been some discussion recently, and I believe we even had some criticism from our monitor that the people on this board weren't getting their training. So, my response to that, I think, is pretty easy. They knew that that was a condition of the position when they volunteered, and I do understand it's a volunteer position. And I thank everyone for their hard work in that. It's a very difficult job. But in order to be compliant, in order to get out of this as fast as possible, we need to make sure we dot all of our I's and cross all of our T's on every level, because as we've heard that some of the police officers are using consent decree as a reason for meeting the force. They're just saying it's making their job too onerous, and this could be just one piece of that, although it's a little bit different. But if it's creating a non-compliance issue for the city, then it's something that we need to gently, on all levels, make sure that we're in compliance. So I just want to ask Mr. Crawford if he has any problem with doing the training that I believe is required under the consent decree and being a member of the board.
Yes, I've been familiarized with the training that's required for CPOB members. I'm definitely willing to do that training, and I'm also interested in seeing if we can figure out why it is that the board is often running behind on that training, because I've gotten the impression there may be some kind of underlying issues there.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Counselor Harris. Counselor Gibson, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam President. And thank you for your interest and for, reaching out to be on this very important board. It's a very important city board that we have. I just wanted to add on the topic of training that some of those trainings have not been made available. So it's not as cut and dry as we would like it to be. There are extenuating circumstances, but I am glad to know that you are interested and have agreed to comply with the training that is required and is available. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Counselor Gibson. Counselor Sena.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Mr. Crawford. Again, it's great to see you again. I think that it's important that the public is aware that staff actually fields through applications, because of course we get a lot. And after staff does that, they have certain recommendations, and Mr. Crawford was one of them. He also met with counselors beforehand and was, at least on my part, grilled pretty heavily. And whether you read the CASA, which IMR he was updated on, how many meetings he's attended. So I just want that to be very transparent, that a lot of these candidates, oftentimes we don't get to see the background work, and really to give credit to our council staff, especially Chris Sylvan, for doing a lot of the work and scheduling all of these meetings, especially when wrangling 9 counselors while avoiding quorum issues. So I just want to say thank you to that. And Mr. Crawford, I think it was already stressed enough as to the importance of this board. And we've had this discussion and really, you know, that the CPOA is accountable to the public, but also based on the CASA, the Court Approved Settlement Agreement, as well as our ordinance is also accountable to both the CASA process and as well as counselors, of course, that we approve these appointments. And so I just want to stress that, and I think it's important to do so. You know, I think that as we continue these conversations, it's not just, of course, we're continuing to make those adjustments to be more accommodating, but of course that there's a separate component when it comes to cost of requirement, right? When it comes to training. And I'm glad that you're, as Councillor Harris was stressing, that each person that chooses to serve on these boards go through the minimum, of course, is the cost of training, and then following up with what's required by our ordinance. So, you know, it's just, again, being transparent to the public that each appointment that we've made, at least we've changed our process so far. So I just want to make that acknowledgement, and that Mr. Crawford was in the hot seat for quite some time under my grilling, and just appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sena. And I too, I want to just mention that that I did sit in on your interview last week, and thank you this morning for meeting with me again. I had a couple of additional questions, and I really appreciate the time that you took to meet with me. I was really impressed by your insight on, you know, with regard to the board and just the documents that that you've read and that you familiarized yourself with. I was, you know, that was very impressive to me. So thank you for that, Mr. Crawford. I think that shows your degree of seriousness and understanding of what you're about to embark in. So with that, counselors, we have a motion and a second. I don't have any additional counselors signed up to speak, so we will move to a vote.
Councillor Bassan.
Yes.
Councillor Benton. Councillor Benton. Councillor Davis.
Yes.
Councillor Gibson.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Jones.
Yes.
Councillor Pena.
Yes.
Councillor Sena.
Yes.
Councillor Borrego.
Yes.
Passes
And
8-0.
Ms. Ortega, Councillor Benton is back online.
Councillor Benton.
Yeah, my vote is yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Crawford. We look forward to seeing you again, and thank you for your commitment. So with that, counselors, we are going to move on to final actions, which is item 14 on our agenda. This is Councillor Pena, Councillor Sena, Councillor Bassan, and Councillor Benton. Councillor Benton, are you wishing to speak first?
I'd like to move approval, Madam President.
Thank you. Can I just read what this is? This is 069, enacting the Albuquerque Automated Speed Enforcement Ordinance to monitor the speed of travel and enforce the speed limit through speed enforcement cameras. I believe that that's a second from Councillor Bassan. Councillor Bassan, is that correct? And I just want to thank the counselors who worked on this committee to come up with these recommendations. There's a motion and there's a second for a due pass. And I guess there is also a floor substitute, correct, Councillor Benton? Oh, he's not on, but I see Councillor Bassan shaking her head yes. So we will, do I have a motion to move the floor substitute?
So moved, Madam President.
Councillor Bassan, that was moved
So
by
moved,
you.
Madam President.
And how about a second from Councillor Benton?
Second, thank you.
Thank you. So the floor substitute is in your iPads, counselors. I will need a vote on the floor substitute. Are there any questions regarding this floor substitute or comments? I do not see any hands raised. So Ms. Ortega, the motion on the floor substitute?
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson,
Yes.
Counselor Harris,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena, Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
9-0 on the floor sub.
Okay, Counselor, so the floor substitute passes on a 9-0. There is, we will go back to the original motion, but I also see that we need a rule suspension.
Madam President, I think we also have an amendment.
Okay, that's not on my script. Or I'm sorry, it is. I just missed it. So we have one amendment. Counselors, and this is Counselor Davis. Counselor Davis, would you care to explain your amendment?
Sure, Madam President. This will be a floor amendment number 1 to floor substitute for O2169. This didn't make it into the sub, but this council had already approved the option for folks to opt into community service in lieu of a fine. This amendment just creates the technical process whereby when a person receives their citation in the mail, they can either opt to pay the fine, opt for a hearing, or opt into community service automatically without having to have a hearing. It just treats each of those options for service and fines equally, and still preserves the right for a person to choose a hearing. And so I would move floor amendment number 1 to floor substitute for O2169.
Thank you, Counselor Davis. We will consider that floor amendment number 1. It appears that either I have 3 seconds or I have 3 questions. I'm not sure if those are seconds. Counselor Bassan, that is a second. Thank you so much. And Counselor Sena and Counselor, let's see, Counselor Harris, do you have a question? Counselor Harris, you're muted.
I want to ask, if you wouldn't, Madam President, Chris Melendra, if procedurally this is the right order. Do we need to suspend the rules for it first, or do you do the amendment first? It doesn't matter.
Madam President, Councilor Harris, in order to finally act on the floor substitute tonight, the floor substitute has been moved, so that's the bill that's before you. It can be amended at this time. If you're going to finally act on that bill tonight, then you would need a rule suspension. However, if Councilor Davis's amendment does pass and there is no rule suspension, it would simply track to the next meeting when you finally vote on the bill.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Harris, for that question. So, Counselor Bassan?
Thank you, Madam President. And this is more of a comment. I know I've spoken with our staff and also with the city administration, but I want to make sure to tell everyone here too that I completely am in agreement with the community service as an option. But later on in the process, I wanted to make sure, and I know that we've been discussing how in the rules making process later on, and should this pass, that we figure out a time frame for community service to be completed so that somebody doesn't just opt into community service and 7 years from now they haven't done it. Whereas if they opt into community service, they have 90 days or whatever, we decide to complete it. If that is not completed, it will revert back to a $100 fine. It's my hopes that we can arrange for this later on. I'm not trying to make a formal amendment here because I don't want to over detail this ordinance, but I do want to make sure that it's on the record that I hope that this is an avenue we can go down later.
Councilor Bassan, Councilor Pena? Councilor Pena?
Thank you, Madam President. I'm trying to get my mouse to click on the unmute button. I actually am just waiting for this amendment to pass. Sorry about that, because I think, I don't know if anyone else is, but I wanted to make a motion to suspend the rules to act on this evening.
Very well. Thank you, Councilor Pena. So with that, we will move to our vote on our floor amendment, and then I will allow Councilor Pena to make that motion for the rule suspension. Ms. Ortega.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson,
Yes.
Counselor Harris,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
9-0 on Amendment 1 to the floor. So
Thank you, counselors. That's the only amendment that we have this evening. So with that, we will move back to Counselor Pena. Counselor Pena?
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the rules be suspended to act on this 069 this evening.
Thank you. And it appears you have a second from Counselor Sena. Is that a second, Counselor Sena? Thank you. Any questions, counselors? If not, we will move to the motion for the rule suspension. Ms. Ortega.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
No.
Counselor Gibson,
Yes.
Counselor Harris,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Borrego.
Yes.
Motion passes 8-1.
Thank you, counselors. With that, we will move back to the original motion of the original bill. Ms. Ortega.
That's substituted.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes, it's as substituted and amended, correct?
As substituted and as amended. Yes, thank you.
Then yes, thank you.
Counselor Benton,
Yes. Urge your support.
Counselor Davis,
No.
Counselor Gibson,
Yes.
Counselor Harris,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Borrego.
Yes. And I
Motion passes
just-
8-1.
Thank you. I just saw a hand up in the budget conference room. I'm sorry I didn't see that earlier. Is Mr. Padilla?
Yeah, Madam President, members of the council, I'd just like to thank you all for working with us on this, and especially thank Chris Melendrez and council staff for helping us tighten up the legislation. There were a lot of help, and just thank everybody for working. And also wanted to let the councilors know that during the rulemaking process, we listen to your concerns and we'll be in touch with you so that you can see the rules as we're moving through the process. But thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Padilla. We have Counselor Pena and Counselor Benton to speak.
I'm not sure, Madam President, if I was first, but I'll just be really quick. I was hoping that we could have a close before we actually went to the vote, but so if you would allow me just a couple of seconds to close on it.
Yes, and I apologize for that. I was moving pretty fast.
That's
So go
okay.
ahead.
That's okay. I think everybody was, there's been a lot of work associated with this. So I want to thank the administration, Mr. Padilla, for your comments. Yeah, I want to thank everyone who's been part of this process. I want to especially thank the small working group and the administration that, we started out on this journey in terms of talking about some of the issues that are affecting our communities. And we still have a long ways to go. So there's still some other outstanding issues that we had to address, but this was something that we could do more quickly in order to address some of the constituents.
Counselor Harris, could you
wow.
mute yourself, please? Thank you. Go ahead,
to address some of the constituent concerns that we've been having. And I think this is a good step in the right direction. I want to thank all the counselors also for Speeding Has a Name. That's one other initiative and the administration that we've been working on to try to address this major concern in our city. And then I want to thank APD as well, for all their work and their collaboration as part of all this. And obviously our council staff, which we couldn't do anything without them, and Jeff and everyone else. So thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Pena. And I apologize for not going to the close. I was moving. This has been on the radar for quite a while, and I know people are wanting to get this done. So Counselor Benton.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. Thanks for allowing us to do a close after the vote. I think I'm very pleased with the outcome. I do want to thank my co-sponsors, Bassan, Pena, and Sena, for being in that working group, and you, Madam President, for always being supportive of it. I know, we shouldn't have to have things like this. There's a perception of it that it's somehow intrusive, but I supported the previous system that we had in place. I thought that was the wrong administrative call at that time to just throw it out, throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. But we really need, we've got an increasingly aggressive group of people on the streets. And I think we need to face up to that. And just, it's not enough to say, well, this automated stuff is some kind of making money. No, we've got to crack down on the behavior on the streets. And this is only a small part of it. And we need APD to do other parts of it. So I appreciate that the mayor backed us on this, and specifically that Chief Medina did, because under Chief Geyer started to talk about a bunch of constitutional questions about these cameras. They're all over the country, people, and all over the world. So we need everything, every tool at our disposal to dispense with this aggressive driving. And this is it ain't gonna fix it. We've got to do a lot more things to fix it, but it takes the load off of APD. So I appreciate all the folks at APD that work with us, the traffic unit and field services, and everyone, especially Chief Medina, who was willing to take another look at this. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Councilor Benton. I want to thank especially our counselors that work together, with the administration and gave of your time. I mean, this involved quite a bit of time. I know that you all had some community meetings, and, we have a lot on our plate as counselors. So this is just an example of our community, working with the council, working with the administration, coming together to find a solution. And I know that this is probably not the only solution, but this is, as Councilor Benton mentioned, this is one of the avenues that will help in the future. And, we look forward to, I hate to say we look forward to getting a ticket, but we get it, it'll definitely make all of us think twice about our speed, about our, the time that it takes to get from point A to point B, and build in the time that we need to do that in order that we don't get a ticket. But it also sends a message to the community that, we are serious about speeding. And I want to thank Councilor Pena for the effort that you had previously with Speeding Has a Name, because that definitely, made an impact on the community. And I think that some of that is what leveraged this to occur tonight. So thank you to everyone that was involved in this. And with that, councilors, we are going to move on to item B. Councilor Benton, R155.
Thank you, Madam President. R155 is a nuisance substandard dwelling or structure in need of abatement at 1804 High Street Southeast within the city limits of Albuquerque, so ruined and damaged and dilapidated as to be a menace to the public comfort, health, peace, and safety, and that it is to be required to be removed. I'll move a do pass.
Thank you, Councilor Benton. You have a second, I believe, from Councilor Bassan. Councilor Bassan, is that a second? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bassan. And Madam President, if I may.
Go ahead, Councilor.
We deferred this for about a month last time. I wanted to give plenty of time to see exactly, as always, and I think this council has always been diligent in trying to ensure that every option is exercised before we tear a building down, especially one like this in a historic part of town. But I asked that Mr. Metzger fill us in on what's happened to date.
Madam President.
Go ahead.
Madam President, Councilor Benton. So progress started to move forward. It stalled for a number of weeks now. Actually, we do have the representative, the owner, who wants to speak on the property. on its condition and the plans to move forward with bringing it into compliance. So I think we'll just kind of, if you don't mind, giving her the floor and letting her kind of say what they have planned.
We've moved her into the chat, I believe. And would you introduce yourself, please, madam, and tell us your interest?
Madam President and the members of the City Council, this is Cassandra Henderson. I am representing on behalf of my sister, Jasmine Henderson. She couldn't be here today. But yes, we are moving progress on the house right now. It had stalled for a little bit while our contractor was in the hospital. So that is the reason for why progress had stopped for a little while, but now he is getting back to it. He had talked with a Christian today, and he had sent him an email regarding what has been done and what is in progress and pending completion. Also, my sister has sent out an email this morning to you all, letting you guys know what is happening and how we're trying to move forward from it. And we're just asking for you guys, the members of the City Council, to just give us time as we're working diligently with the contractor as he is trying to fit us into his busy schedule in between clients to get all the stuff done. So we are really trying, and I do have the documentation here. He drafted it up today, and so he is starting to work on it. And this week, there's going to be more work done. So we're just asking for a little bit more time, as it does take time and money as well to get all this stuff done.
Thank you, Ms. Henderson. Councilor Benton, did you have a question?
No, I wanted to thank Ms. Henderson for being here. And yes, any of us who tries to do a small residential project these days is facing a lot of delays because of we need more young builders out there. Come talk to me. Swinging a hammer is a good thing. But so that is the nature of things. My sister is trying to get a simple addition of an accessible bathroom to her home, and they've been waiting for a couple of years now to get somebody to actually do it. But if you've got a contractor who's actively looking at this, that's a huge step forward. And I don't know, I would say let's come back in a month now again and check in with you again, if that's all right with you. That would be my motion.
Councilor Benton, are you making a motion for a 30-day deferral then?
Yes, that would be to November 8th, I believe. November 3rd, sorry.
November 3rd, 30 days.
Thank you, Ms. Ortega.
Miss Councilor Bassan, is that a second? Councilor Pena, a second, I think. Thank you, councilors. All right, we will move to Ms. Ortega for a vote.
Councilor Bassan.
Yes.
Councilor Benton.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Gibson.
Yes.
Councilor Harris.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilor Jones.
Yes.
Councilor Pena.
Yes.
Councilor Sena.
Yes.
Councilor Borrego.
Yes.
9-0 on the deferral to November 3rd.
Thank you, Ms. Ortega. Ms. Henderson, that item has been deferred for 30 days, and we hope to hear back from you with some sort of schedule at our November 3rd meeting regarding this property. Thank you
all.
Thank you. And please also work with Mr. Metzger. All right, councilors, we are on item D. This is Councilor Borrego and Councilor Sena, R195. And I will just read this into the record. I move a due pass directing that the Civilian Police Oversight Agency provided training compliance report for members of the Civilian Police Oversight Agency Board with respect to the training requirements under the court-approved settlement agreement with the U.S. Department of Justice and the CPOA ordinance. And I have a second from Councilor Sena. Councilor Sena, Councilor Davis, or did you want to speak? Councilor Sena?
Thank you, Madam President. I do have an amendment after discussing this resolution. And thank you, Madam President, for allowing me to jump on also as a co-sponsor to the resolution. I think it's important that some adjustments do be made. Of course, since the dates have passed. And so the floor amendment number 1 is what you see on the screen. It's also really pushing for city legal to also review the document that was submitted and also allow our CPOA members to come back to discuss after the reviewing of the document from city legal. I think it's important too, of course, on our part, that we make this review. Of course, that the IMR had stated in compliance for quite some time, and this resolution brought forward some more communication when it comes to updated information on trainings. And so I encourage all of you to support this amendment.
Thank you, Counselor. There's a motion. I'll make a second. And actually, Counselor, I think I was supposed to be shown on the amendment as a co-sponsor, but that didn't show up. So for the record, I'll just say that. And we have some questions, I think, from Counselor Davis.
Thank you, Madam President. And I'll make my question sort of about the amendment just to keep things moving here. But I think my broader question is, and I recognize that this has been a deficiency that's been identified in a number of reports, and I appreciate us raising this issue. But my question is, has anybody just asked CPOA for the list of training? Like, I've talked to members of the board who said no one asked them for this. So
Madam President, Councilor Davis, this is Mr. Aguilar in the budget conference room. Yes, there have been several requests that have for the training information, including by the monitoring team, members of the Department of Justice. When we were notified at the beginning of the month about, or I'm sorry, the beginning of last month, of the continued deficiencies and the concern over a willful noncompliance, we did reach out both to the agency and the board to produce the documentation of those records. And we received various different production over the last 2 weeks, which we have incorporated into our analysis. Councilor Sena, I understand that that's subject part of the amendment. We did circulate our analysis and our review to Mr. Melendrez this afternoon, I believe, so you should have that as well. So
thank you, Madam President. So to follow, it sounds like, Mr. Aguilar, that, am I understanding this incorrectly? But I have 2 parts to my question. Number 1, it sounds like they have submitted this and you've done the analysis already. Did I misunderstand?
Yes, and yeah, we've done our own analysis of how we have viewed the compliance for the IMR 14 period, which ended on July 31st. Obviously, there has been several submissions by members of the board to the monitoring team. We will not know if those submissions are accepted as verification or not until the final monitoring report is submitted, which will be November 10th.
And thank you, Madam President, and Mr. Aguilar. And again, Mr. Aguilar, I'm just trying to get to I want to be sure we're doing this right. And I'm sure that I'm confused or confusing the issue, but it sounds like you have received what you can from the board and have completed an analysis. And so I don't know why we need a separate piece of legislation to redo what's already been done. And I want to pigeonhole that, Madam President, with the follow-up question so we don't have to belabor this. We were told during a previous meeting and by some of the members of the board that many of the training records they thought were being kept by the police department at the academy because the training was completed at the academy. Have we inquired from APD about the status of that training for those items that were completed there? And is that included here?
Madam President, Councilor Davis, none of the training that is deficient is held or housed at the academy. The agency is tasked and responsible for keeping track of its own training records. Under our review and analysis for this period, which has been confirmed by the monitoring team, the board is not in compliance.
And so, Madam President, I'll stop and just say, Mr. Aguilar, can you clarify for me, do you anticipate that if we pass this resolution, that the board will create a new record or additional records they have not done? Or have you already done have we done all this work, and should we just take a look at the analysis?
Madam President,
Mr. Melendrez wants to jump in too.
Maybe I can just hopefully illuminate a couple of considerations. So the first is, you're absolutely correct that the board did submit a training report, and that was what the whole point of the original resolution did. So that was submitted, and they did it very timely. They did it in advance of when the council was even asking them to do that. Once that report was submitted, there was a need to have that report evaluated. So this resolution amendment would direct city legal to evaluate that report, which, as Mr. Aguilar represented, they also have done. So they are also in the getting ahead of the curve game. However, what this resolution also calls for is to give the city, this amendment, to give the city council the opportunity to consider the report that Mr. Aguilar's office has prepared. And so that report did come to me early this afternoon, and I've reviewed it preliminarily. But I think it's important for the city council to have an opportunity to formally review that. And given that it just came in today, the idea is that you would have that opportunity on the 18th. And I think that's important potentially for a couple of reasons. And one of which is that that report has also not been circulated to the CPOA board, the executive director. And so it seems fitting that they would have an opportunity to also come in and comment on that before the city council sort of makes a judgment about their report versus what the city attorney discovered.
And Madam President, thank you, Mr. Melendez. That will conclude sort of my questions. I appreciate that. I just kind of think that we sort of asked and we got what we wanted and we got the analysis. I think we'd have been better suited to do all that work, just asking folks to help us get the information and then come back and put it as a presentation item, or if someone wanted to do it in resolution. It just seems to me that we're writing a law that says do the thing that you already did and everybody already turned their homework in on time. But I guess it doesn't hurt if it needs to just say we're going to have a hearing about it, even though I think we could just have a hearing. So anyway, I have an issue and a trouble, Madam President, with I feel like a lot of the messaging around public safety right now is about finger pointing and blame that somebody didn't do their job or that someone else needs additional oversight or different whatever, instead of us just sitting down and working on these solutions. And that's really my criticism here, is that we could have just asked, and in fact we did, and they gave us what we wanted and we got the information, and we should talk about it before we pass laws that dictate what people shall do when they've already done it. And so I'm concerned that I appreciate the amendment. I'll vote for it. I'll vote for the resolution because I don't think it does much, but I do think that we're getting into this cycle of just sort of looking for people to blame instead of doing the tough work. And I think there's blame all around, including in this council and at CPOA and in other folks. So thank you, Madam President. That's my soapbox. That's my one for the day. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We will move to Councillor Benton and then to Councillor Sena.
Thank you, Madam President. And I think the problem is they're not doing their homework on time. We've got a report, thank goodness, finally, about this that was put together by the city attorney, not by the board. And it pretty clearly shows that the board is way behind in meeting their obligations under not so much our requirement, but the settlements requirement. So I think that this bill has served a purpose. It's gotten their attention. And I think they need to give a great deal of attention to this. We appreciate their service on the board, but these are some basic requirements of the CASA, and they need to be met, and without questioning where they turn it into or anything like that. It is pretty much internal to the agency. So the board needs to talk to their director instead of squabbling with them. And, these requirements are very clear. You can call up and talk to our local Department of Justice if you want to understand it, and they're very clear. I know most councilors have done that already. I don't think there's a need for this bill, so I won't be supporting it at this point, but I appreciate President Borrego for putting it forward because it got their attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Benton, Councillor Sena, and Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Madam President. You know, for me, I always am looking for the sustainability of the CPOA. I think we all are. At the same time, you know, I really do wish that this resolution would not be necessary. However, we have known since IMR 13 of the incompliance, right? And maybe even a little bit before that. However, it wasn't until this resolution was produced that we started to get more information and documentation when it comes to training that, you know, that the monitoring team had no access to or didn't know of or was not aware of even either. So, you know, I think that, of course, we don't want to have this resolution, but in order to get them into compliance as well, because I had stated it when we confirmed our new CPOA member as well, is that, you know, this board is, of course, independent, but at the same time also accountable to the CASA process as well as the ordinance. And they're not in compliance because they're not following our ordinance. They're not in compliance because they're not following the CASA. And that's what we're really trying to figure out and understand. And through this resolution, we're trying to at least understand what is the miscommunication, what can we make the process better, and having our board members come before the council to understand, is it an issue of reporting? And of course, we are hearing of issues and we want to support a more sustainable, more cohesive agency. And like Councilor Benson was saying, that we are behind when we have over 300 complaints, 170 of them actually being you know, official complaints, and yet only 22 cases being closed, and having to extend constantly in terms of rolling over cases. That's not due process to our officers, and it's also not due process to those that are issuing those complaints. So for me, it's also understanding what is required of our board members when it comes to our trainings. And so I just want to stress that this resolution, of course, we don't want to have it because I believe that the IMRs are sufficient enough in reminding our CPOA members that they're not doing their due diligence when it comes to their training as part of the CASA. And then it's on our end as to what we're trying to hold them as part of our ordinance. And I know that we're already trying to address on our end in terms of our ordinance side, just because we want to have a board that's not just so overburdened when it comes to training. So, you know, I won't stress on that point too much, just because I know that there's a lot of work that we're continuing to do. However, you know, I think it's important for us as a council to review these documents, especially what is produced to us and what is the monitoring team getting, and why is it that they're different? And at least circling back to our the agency to review that. So I think it's important that we check all of our boxes and review all of the documents, and just to understand where is this miscommunication, if there is any. That's what's important here, to understand what is our monitoring team receiving, what is the agency receiving, and what is council receiving, and why is it that there is this miscommunication and that some of the trainings are not aligned. So that's why this resolution is necessary. And of course, that this amendment is just having us come back and review this and at least have the discussion with our board members. Of course, they're always invited to come towards council, but really it wasn't through until this resolution was done that we've had at least more of a response.
Thank you, Councillor Sena. Councillor Benton.
Quick question for Mr. Aguilar. We saw in the report that we were presented with that numerous members had stated that or I think it was confirmed that they had put in their information that was still pending from Dr. Ginger. Did I get that right?
Madam President, Councillor Benton, yes and no. They have submitted what they have represented as verification of completion of the training. That we will not know whether that it has been deemed acceptable to the monitor until the final report comes out. History tells us, and the representations from the members of the monitoring team, though, that they will be out of compliance in the IMR 14 period. But you know, that's again only focused on the CASA related obligations. Again, there's a separate bucket of additional training that the council has oversight over.
Definitely, but in some of those, it was unknown whether it was going to be acceptable or not. Although the respective board members had stated that they thought that they had complied and had been submitted, but that primarily, you know, again, I primarily focus on getting out of the settlement someday, and that would be for the monitor to decide. And so you're saying that is when will we know whether those are acceptable or not? Because that seems like maybe a plug in the pipeline.
Madam President, Councilor Benton, we will know November 10th when the final IMR 14 is released to the parties. I will say I agree with the comments Councilor Davis made. I think that there is a lot of finger pointing, and I think that the bigger issues are what is the cause of the deficiency, what's the cause of the issue, and how do we move on past that. I will say with respect to the centralized training, the agency is no longer going to be taking account or keeping tabs of that. It has been, or they are currently moving the all of the training modules to the city's training program where they have an ability to audit who's actually signing on, who's watching the videos, and then there will be a short quiz afterwards. So that will, in essence, resolve some of this issue right here. Because I do agree that it's important to move forward, but it's also the council's responsibility to ensure that this board is functioning correctly. And the training, it's not simply a matter of checking a box. The training gives these members critical insight into what APD faces on a daily basis. It provides them with training into standard operating procedures, training into the CASA, because it's that important because this board is in a lot of ways holding the lives and livelihoods of these officers in their hands when they're going about their work. So if you have any other additional questions, I'm happy to answer those, and we'll stay engaged throughout this process.
Yeah, thanks, Esteban. Madam President, without question, we have our end of the deal to hold up. And we do need to move forward with the clarifications that I think are needed within the ordinance. We've amended it before, we can amend it again. Everything that we've done has been in compliance with what the DOJ settlement, the CASA states, and we need to ensure that that we've made that very clear to these people who are volunteering a tremendous amount of their time. And I didn't mean to say, cast aspersions on them as a group or anything like that. It takes a lot to serve on this board, and I happen to support some sort of remuneration for that. But, those are other discussions we can have, and those are discussions I think this council should continue to have about how we can help them be successful. So thank you, Esteban, and thank you, Ms. President.
Thank you, Councilor Benton. And I just want to say that, we just appointed another individual this evening who really did his homework in terms of getting up to speed on the insights of the reporting, especially as he was grilled by all of us and questioned about his commitment. And I'm that doesn't go to say that other people are not committed. It's just that there are certain requirements that they need to obtain in order to stay on the board and to continue on that board. And I think that we see that when we do the Planning Commission or we do any of the other boards, the museum board or, the open space board, there are certain commitments. And if those commitments are not being met, then we need to know. And I think that is really what this bill is about is, what has not been done and what needs to be done and how do we get there and how do we gain that compliance that we need to obtain. And if the monitor's report is telling us that there are certain things that have not been met, then we have a responsibility. So, unless Councilor Sena has additional information to add, I would like to move on the amendment and take the vote. But I would certainly urge your support on the amendment and the bill. So with that, Ms. Ortega.
Counselor Basant,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson,
Yes.
Counselor Harris,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
9-0 on Amendment 1.
Thank you, counselors. We will move back to the original bill, R195. Counselor Sena, would you like to close?
Thank you, Madam President. I think that, I pretty much stated a lot of the information as to why this resolution is important. Of course, we don't want to have these resolutions, but as was stated by our city attorney, that it's important that they have the tools necessary to do their job. And like I said, we want a sustainable CPOA so that in the event of when our monitor leaves, that the CPOA is able to take over. We want them, we're not asking them to have PhDs and become doctors like Dr. Ginger. However, we do want them to understand policy and procedures enough to make those critical recommendations as to why policies need to be changed to bring about more constitutional policing. It's why we were in this process to begin with. So that's why we can't stress it enough in terms of why we push for these trainings. At the same time, of course, we are cognizant of our board members when it is volunteer. No other board aside for maybe EPCs really commits the time. And for our CPOA, it's a very important board and agency that is providing a lot of these critical evaluations in terms of policy. And so with that, I'm going to urge your support on this resolution.
Thank you, Counselor Sena. I think you already heard what I had to say, and I don't think that, this, I think the finger pointing needs to stop. I think we just want to have compliance, and that's my close on this, and I urge your support. Ms. Ortega.
Counselor Basant.
Yes.
Counselor Benton. Counselor Benton.
I think Counselor Benton is frozen.
Yes.
Oh,
Thank you. I heard that. Counselor Davis.
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
No.
Counselor Harris.
Yes.
Counselor Jones.
No.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Sena.
Yes.
Counselor Borrego.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-2.
Thank you, counselors. With that, we will move on to our next order of business, which is item number E. Counselor Benton and Counselor Davis, R202.
This is in Counselor DeBenton's district. I'll let him present it if he has a connection.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got a bad connection. How did that last vote go? Did they record my vote?
It was a 7-2 vote.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Madam President. This is approving this is R202 approving the petition of the regents of UNM by and through Lobo Development Corporation and New Mexico Nonprofit Corporation, formed under the Research Park and of the South Campus Tax Increment Development District. I move a do pass.
Thank you, Counselor Benton. And we have a second from Counselor Davis. I would like to just mention that we are now opening the public hearing, and we will start with a brief presentation by Damian Latta, Acting Economic Development Director, and Kim Murphy with the Lobo Development Group, I guess it is. So with that, we will go to our presentation, Mr. Lara and Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, President Borrego. I don't know if Kim is present or?
Yeah, thank you, Damien. Yes, I am present.
Okay.
And appreciate the opportunity to make this brief presentation. Damien, would you like to make a few remarks, or would you like me to begin?
Why don't you start, Kim, and then I can talk a little bit about some of the public improvements that that the city is moving forward on. I think they were further down in the slide, and I can take over from there.
Okay, very good. Madam Chair, members of the council, just bear with me briefly here before so I can figure out how to navigate this.
And so we can just move past the slides, and then Mr. Moya will move the slides when you're ready to
Okay, very good. I was looking to see if I had control or not.
No, you would. Yeah, I know it gets a little tricky, Kim, but yeah.
All right, very good.
So there we go.
Thank you. Apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. If you would just tell us when you need to move to the next slide, we will, Mr. Moya will move it forward.
Very good. Very good. And I think I can get on the screen so you could see me. Yeah, so let me just move through quickly here. This is kind of a high-level presentation, but let's just talk a bit here first about what we see as the benefits of this tax increment development district. First of all, and you'll see the boundaries of the district here shortly, but it encompasses the university and city-owned property on what we call South Campus, with the addition of a couple of small tracts of land on main campus on Central Avenue. But basically, as many of you are aware, we have property here that has been undeveloped for a considerable period of time. But we also have an area that has substantial public investment already. We're estimating somewhere around 400 million, perhaps more, in both university and city and county state investment. And the TID will continue the opportunities to expand economic activity on this major employment, athletic, and entertainment complex. We're going to expand the research facilities at our Science and Technology Park that will create new jobs. We're going to create an enhanced, more attractive southern gateway into the city. And we're going to provide needed commercial services, facilities, and amenities. Next slide, please. This TID is unique among all the TIDs that have been created, and many of which several of which occur in the city of Albuquerque, because it's a public partnership. It's a government to government driven endeavor, and through both the city and the university, using Lobo Development Corporation, which is the commercial development arm of the Regents, wholly owned and operated by the Regents. We're combining public resources to create additional private sector activities. We're creating new tax revenue to fund further public investment that will also enable private investment. And another really unique aspect of this TID is because of its the public partnership aspect of it. We can address additional public improvements and investment much beyond what has traditionally been done in a TID. Largely, TIDs are private sector driven, so they're mainly focused on infrastructure that will attract private development. That's important. That we've included that as an important aspect of our TID, but this partnership allows us to go beyond that and provide money for regional transportation and transit, recreation and trails, and public safety. These items are typically not addressed in a private sector driven TID. Next slide, please.
And so, Kim, I just kind of want to touch base a little bit on those as well, because I know that those are big priorities for the residents of Albuquerque and including some of our counselors here for their constituents. So some of the things that we're looking at is the bus rapid transit system along University and leveraging this partnership to provide for additional federal funding to make that a corridor and improve our public transportation system that would eventually connect to the Mesa del Sol and the development that is happening there, and ensuring that we have a rapid transit system for public systems that is provides a synergy between this TID as well as the Mesa del Sol TID down there as well. We mentioned some of the open spaces, but particularly the trails on the Buena Vista. I know that those are important to some of our counselors. Those are included in there as well. And of course, our health and public safety. As you see, we have some fire stations that are going to be included in there to ensure that we are providing the necessary security and safety concerns for the added commercial, but also residential areas that will be happening there, which would include a fire station, an additional substation for PDFs, and perhaps even including the ShotSpotter, which is one of the real-time crime center systems to ensure that we have rapid responses to any shots fired within a 40-yard radius. So all of these things, as Mr. Murphy indicated, are part of our public safety and our improvements that are really public investments that you normally wouldn't see in another TID, but that we can really leverage these same increments towards making those improvements and paying for these improvements that we know will happen with increased economic development in the area.
Yep. Thank you very much for that more detailed explanation, providing that essential those details. So this next slide here just illustrates the boundary map. District comprises 337 acres. Largely university land, but some significant land by the city, including the fire station, the APS land, former APS land south of Lowell Elementary, and the public street right away are included. Next slide, please. This is just a high-level segmentation of the development areas, identifying the Science and Technology Park at kind of the north end, where about 800,000 square feet of space, new spaces planned. What we call Lobo Village Retail and Entertainment, which is along Cesar Chavez, flanking our student housing project and adjacent to the athletic facilities and the Science and Technology Park. Almost 500,000 square feet of space there. And some of these numbers I need to just qualify. Some of these numbers, like those first two I just mentioned, also include significant parking structures. So that those numbers that I've just quoted include the parking structures. Gibson Town Center, south of the pit, south of the baseball softball field complex, about 500,000 square feet of space proposed there. And then not shown on this graphic is the central campus gateways, both at University and Central Avenue and at Girard and Central Avenue, about 700,000 square feet of space. The other major land use areas are the athletics, student parking, and event parking, which are shown there in the kind of the center of the illustration. Next slide, please. This is a detailed illustrative plan showing our planned land use, and I won't go through it in any detail, but it is a kind of a true mixed infill mixed use project with offices, research and development facilities at our Science and Technology Park, several parking structures. Retail is an important component that will drive gross receipts and property tax that will enable us to further invest in the expansion of the Science and Technology Park. hotel, entertainment, mixed use, residential, recreation trails, and transportation. Next slide, please. So many of you are aware of this, but this is a project that has been some time coming. We started this project with almost 3 years ago in 2018 with a joint feasibility memorandum of understanding between the university and the city to study the feasibility of a tax increment development district. That feasibility study produced a recommendation that we move forward. So a preliminary TID application was prepared and submitted for consideration in June of 2019. This city council acted on a intent resolution in December of non-binding, that I should emphasize, non-binding intent resolution in December of 2019 based on the preliminary application. And then a final joint TID petition and application was completed and submitted on March of this year. Next slide, please. This just recounts exactly sort of what the process has been for the formal joint application. We again had an intent resolution that was passed in August. We of course have the hearing today on the formation of the district. There will be a separate consideration of the master development agreement at some point subsequent to this hearing, and we are moving forward with Board of Regents approval of the master development agreement, somewhat in parallel with the City Council that's scheduled for the 19th of October. Next slide, please. This is just a summary of the TID revenues. You can see the contributions that we're anticipating from the county and the state, and we're looking at a total of about $336 million in revenue over the 25-year term of the TID. Next slide, please. This is a little more detail, but still at a high level of the public improvements that would be funded. We've broken them out into subdivision level improvements. That's the water lines, sewer lines, streets, drainage, those kinds of things that are necessary in order to further develop the land. About 19 million for that. The other category is what we call amenity improvements, and those are trails and bike paths, pedestrian paths, because the university is a public entity, and of course the city is also a public entity. We can incorporate public parks and plazas and fund those with the TID because they're considered public improvements that will be owned and maintained by those public entities. The building improvements are expansion of building facilities at the Science and Technology Park that will drive job creation and economic development. We've included in that number a couple of parking structures and about 260,000 square feet of R&D and office space. The regional improvements, again, are unique. Those include potential contributions toward Interstate 25 interchanges, other regional transportation. As Damien said, the bus rapid transit line on University Boulevard. We've got funds set aside for regional recreation, energy conservation as well. And so those total $267 million anticipated.
And Kim, if you don't mind also, the amenity improvements that Murphy indicated are definitely in there, but under those same amenity improvements, there are also what we consider some additional public safety concerns, additional lighting crosses, improvements for safety and pedestrian crosswalks along Cesar Chavez University by the Pit and Recreation. We anticipate that as it increases in walking ability, so we will have some improvements for that as well that are technically under the amenity improvements as well, but that are really crucial for ensuring pedestrian safety as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, addition. Next slide, please. Here's just a snapshot of the district financing. Like many of the TIDs, we're going to use a combination of sources that include what's called short-term bonds or sponge bonds. Those will be issued several times, multiple times really, throughout the life of the project. At various times when the revenue streams have been perfected and underwriting indicates that long-term bonds can be issued, then that will be done, about $90 million for long-term bonds. And then there's a small amount of direct pay, which according to our bond counsel can be provided directly from either the city or the county.
Wrap it up. Okay. Yeah, this is the last one.
Next slide, please. So with that, I'll stand for any questions, or perhaps Damon can assist with any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. It's always a pleasure to see you. Councilor Bassan.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to ask a couple questions. One is, and forgive me because I'm still learning about TIDs and all of the details in the process of all of that. So can you clarify if the eventual tenants will end up paying taxes even though it's publicly owned land?
Yeah, Madam President, Councilor Bassan, yes, the large part of the revenue is going to come from gross receipts tax from businesses that are operating within the district. But property tax will be paid on private owned improvements that are built within the district as well. The land, as you indicate, the land itself will be tax exempt.
Thank you for the clarification. And then one more, and I mean, I can't not ask it, but what kind of athletic and events are you planning on doing here?
Well, I mean, you need to make clear that there's nothing in our plan that will specifically go toward university athletic events. However, what we're looking at in terms of entertainment is private sector driven entertainment, restaurants, other kinds of food establishments, possibly a theater, other kinds of, and there's a whole host of new models of new type entertainment that we'd like to see incorporated into the plan, because we're gonna have a lot of people, they're either live in or nearby, or are going to come to this district, and they need a reason to stay.
Madam President, and one follow-up on that. So just to clarify, the sporting events that are going to take place here are anticipated to only belong to UNM athletes. Or is that maybe like a private thing could happen too? I mean, there's a whole bunch of talk about stadiums and sports. So I want to just make sure that the public is clear on some of the options that are or are not linked to this, because if this is going to be something that's done for UNM by UNM for the students and the athletes, I'm not even arguing that, like that makes sense. I just know that some people are going to ask, if we enter into this agreement and we work on this together, then people are going to start asking, well, why can't soccer happen here?
Right now, Madam President, Councilor Bassam, the recreation that's planned, recreation facilities that are planned for the district right now will either be private sector driven, or they'll be public owned and available and open to the public. We're not anticipating, the plan right now does not anticipate that funds from the district will be used for either university facilities or any other athletic venues. Let me just put it that way. The plan does not contemplate that.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy.
Looking to see if there are other counselors with their hands up. And I'm surprised, Councilor Benson. There you are, Councilor Benson. Go ahead.
I'll try and see if my connection remains. Mr. Murphy, just to clarify, on the maps, it does show that finger that goes over towards Buena Vista, which is a city. Now it's going to be in the Parks Department. It's going to be a potential amenity to the neighborhoods there and to Lowell Elementary School, and also a connection from those neighborhoods, a pedestrian connection, I think, to the main development, which is the Gibson Town Center portion. And I appreciate the university putting that in. That was at my request. Looking forward to working together with you and with the Parks Department and figuring out how we could get that amenity in sooner rather than later, and it will be an absolute benefit to the development of the project and to pedestrian connectivity in that area. So thanks for that. But all in all, I mean, this promises quite a bit of mercantile and pedestrian, mercantile and resident amenities that in an area that's largely underserved by that kind of amenity. So I would just say, I hope that as you look for tenants, that the first on your list are Albuquerque businesses and New Mexico businesses.
Counselor, would you like to move the floor sub?
Sure, I'll move the floor substitute to the bill.
Thank you. I'll second that. Are there any comments regarding the floor sub, counselors? I don't see any. Counselor Benton, do you want to just say anything regarding that?
Well, the floor sub is an update, but it's mostly technical changes as far as I know, but correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Murphy or Mr. Lara. Excuse me, Director
It is
Lara.
in your iPads, counselors.
Yeah.
President, Councilor Benton, those are correct. It's updating some of the improvements that we went through that would be important to yourself, as you indicated, and ensuring that we had those in there. So they were all technical changes, no substantive changes to what you've previously seen.
Thank you, Director Lara.
And I see that Mr. Muirhead was on the, just popped in. So if anybody has any questions for him, please, this is your opportunity to ask him. I don't see any questions. I will just also, for the record, mention that Councilor Harris had to leave at this point. So we have a motion and a second for the floor sub to be approved. Ms. Ortega.
Councilor Bassan. Councilor Bassan, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your vote.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilor Benton.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Gibson.
Yes.
Councilor Harris. Excuse, thank you. Councilor Jones.
Yes.
Councilor Pena.
Yes.
Councilor Sena.
Yes.
Councilor Borrego.
Yes.
8-0 on the floor sub.
Thank you, councilors. The floor sub passes on an 8-0 vote. We will go back to the original bill. Councilor Benton.
I urge your support.
Were there any other comments? Before we vote on it, I just wanted to express my comment really quick. I really do look forward to this partnership between the city of Albuquerque and UNM. I was recently ran into Garnett Stokes, president of UNM, and Go Lobos, right? And I just expressed, my the anxiousness of seeing this bill on the agenda and the working relationship that we can develop for this area. And I know that Councillor Benton has been working on this area for a long time. And Councillor Benton, I'll just mention, and I'll just give you a reminder about the rail runner spur to the airport at some point in time, if you remember that. And I think it was the late 90s or early 2000, we had that study in that area. So, it takes a long time, but it could happen, right?
Still some potential there, Madam President.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I just thought I'd spark your interest on that. With that, councilors, we are going to go ahead and take a vote. Thank you, Mr. Murphy, Mr. Laura, Mr. Muirhead. I also, before we take a vote, we are now closing the public hearing and we're going to ask for the vote. Ms. Ortega.
Councillor Bassan.
Yes. As amended. I'm sorry.
Councillor Benton.
Yes.
Councillor Davis.
Yes.
Councillor Gibson.
Yes.
Councillor Jones.
Yes.
Councillor Pena.
Yes.
Councillor Sena.
Yeah.
Councillor Borrego.
Yes.
8-0 on R202 as substituted.
Thank you, councilors. So we are on our last order of business. Councillor Benton, Councillor Borrego, and Councillor Sena are 205. And I don't know if Councillor Sena or Councillor Benton would like to present this.
Madam President, this was largely the work of the administration, so I'd like to give them the chance to make the presentation. I think this is an important issue that we've had before us, and a painful one sometimes, and certainly complex in terms of the development of the city around the old AIS. But I think the administration ought to get the kickoff on this.
And I'll just remind us that this is acknowledging and recognizing the Albuquerque Indian School Cemetery at 4-H Park as a historical and sacred burial site, and also acknowledging the historical and ongoing intergenerational trauma experienced by Native American individuals, families, and tribal nations as a result of Indian boarding school policies, and committing to work with the tribal nations and local Native Americans toward reconciliation and healing. Miss Nara, good evening.
Hi, Council President Borrego, members of the council. Thank you for hearing. Thank you for hearing this resolution. I will just really turn this over to one of the leaders in our administration on this topic, Don Begay, who's our tribal liaison. But before I do just want to commend the work of her and Terry Sloan and our Office of Equity and Inclusion, as well as Parks, who's represented today with David Flores. And, this is, as usual, Albuquerque is a little different than the national narrative. And we really, again, had to sort of carve our own path and recognize both the unique history of the site, the earlier efforts, although imperfect, that the city in previous administrations before all of us were here did make to try to acknowledge the history of this site, and then also the fact that just wasn't enough and that there's more to be done. I think our team has really navigated that path in a very thoughtful and respectful way. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Begay.
Thank you, Sarita. Ms. Begay, welcome.
Thank you, Madam President and members of the council. Yes, so at the end of June, Parks and Rec alerted our office that social media was announced that a plaque at one of the 4-H park went missing. And when we found out what it was to kind of acknowledge 4-H Park as being the final resting place for Albuquerque Indian School students. And they wanted to know whether or not we were going to, whether or not the city was the one who removed the plaque. And so when we did some investigations, we realized it wasn't missing, and it was missing, and it wasn't at the actions of the city of Albuquerque. But this alerted the city to a larger issue of the fact that a city park was built over an Albuquerque Indian boarding school cemetery. So we went to look into some more information and really trying to see, like, how did this evolve? And so a lot of what we found out is that according to some of the records, is the Albuquerque Indian School Cemetery was active from approximately 1888 to 1930. And this was maintained by the Albuquerque Indian School. And how it came into possession for the city of Albuquerque is in the 1960s, the BIA conveyed about 7 acres of the land encompassing the cemetery to Bernalillo County. At that time, they established the New Mexico Highlands office, the 4-H Center, and the 4-H rodeo grounds. Within that same year, other land transactions occurred between the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the city of Albuquerque, and Bernalillo County. And this was part of the discussions for the Manal extension. And so part of that was the city ended up subleasing about almost 3 acres of it, and that ended up becoming the 4-H Park. So we do have some city surveys of the area where they have the exact location and dimensions of the cemetery. But other than a few maps, we do not know much about the site itself. We do know that in 1973, when some of the maintenance workers went to install irrigations, remains were uncovered. And we only know this because of Albuquerque Journal reported on the incident. There's no additional city records about who's there, whether or not the remains are still there, or any information about the cemetery itself. And so just a little bit background information is the Indian boarding school started out in 1819 as part of the Indian Civilization Fund Act, where the federal government deliberately contracted with churches to quote unquote civilize American Indian children and to commit cultural genocide by stripping of their language, culture, and traditions. And this includes the Albuquerque Indian School. And much of this created a lot of intergenerational and historical trauma that passed on from each generation. Some of the statistics I pulled is that by 1926, nearly 83% of American Indian children were enrolled in boarding schools. Albuquerque Indian School at its time was housing up to 300 students by the early 1990s, and it was in operation from 1881 through 1881 through 1981. And a lot of the records from that, when the school closed down and transferred over to the Santa Fe Indian Boarding School, were lost. So we do not have an account of the identities of the students. We do not have an account of the tribal affiliations of the students who were buried there. And so that was really kind of what sparked a conversation between Parks and Rec, our office, the Commission on American Indian, Alaska Native Affairs. Is it didn't seem appropriate just to replace the plaque. A lot of the actions were to what is the appropriate response to this. And so our efforts initially were to gather as much information as possible, and then to really look at community input to kind of set it, what should the future of the site be. And so meeting with the commission, they developed their own recommendations memo to the administration. And we had a stakeholders meeting where they put together a series of recommendations. And that was one really for the burial site, is the city really should undertake the investigation for the loss of human life and the lasting consequences of Indian boarding schools. And also for the investigation to confirm the identities and the tribal affiliations of the children interred at the site. Another one is to really close down or acknowledge the site as a cemetery and to close it down to recreational use. Because right now it is still a park available for recreational use on top of the cemetery. To continue to collect relevant information and historical records and to reveal the truth of the history about this site and the impact it's had on Native communities. And to include a lot of the descendants of Albuquerque Indian School, organizations, nonprofits, federal organizations, state organizations, and tribes about the appropriate next steps for the future of this site. And so part of our tribal consultations is we did reach out to Navajo, or the initial 8 tribes surrounding Albuquerque, and also those that were identified on the plaque that is now missing, which included Navajo, Pueblo, and Apache. But some other investigations that we found out included Pima from Arizona and Ute from Arizona as well. And most of the students that were there were from distant areas because if they became sick or ill or, were they passed away, they were not able to be transported back to their communities. And so they were buried at one of the local sites. And so we will continue to engage in our tribal consultation to really understand the feedback and get recommendations on the future of the site, to address any cultural concerns in terms of like doing invasive or non-invasive excavation, and what's the appropriate manner in terms of like how do we approach this, and then the future protection of the site. How do we protect the site both culturally and physically into the future? And so we have a good list of recommendations. A big part of this is really to look into building capacity on how we can implement and address a lot of the recommendations made by stakeholders, tribes, and the commission.
And thank you, Dawn. And if I may just add a couple things, Council President.
Ms. Nair, go ahead.
Thank you.
And may I just say that Ms. Begay, that was very good. That was very informative.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So, technology has also advanced since the park was initially acceded into the city's control. And so there are some technological ways of sort of imaging what might be underground that are non-invasive, as Ms. Begay referred to, that we are looking at partnering with UNM on. So there is some ability to use innovation to get a sense of what's going on here. And also one of the recommendations that Ms. Begay mentioned was specifically for the council to take this step of adopting this resolution, just to show the widespread support that I know you all share for recognizing the trauma and the history of the property. And the final thing I wanted to add is that the site that is a burial ground is not necessarily coextensive with the entire park. So when Ms. Begay talks about closing off the areas that are involve burial sites, it may not be the entire park. That's something that we have to look at as we go through the investigation of the premises. And with that, I'll turn it back over to all of you for questions, probably for Dawn. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nair. I also see Ms. Melendez on the line. Ms. Melendez, did you want to say anything?
Thank you, Madam President and members of the council. I also just want to acknowledge the work that Parks has done to start treating the site very specially and carefully, and have marked it off with tiny little flags just to, designate the area that is under review, and also to handle the maintenance very delicately until final decisions are arrived at. Parks is being very, very respectful and culturally responsive. So I thank them for that.
Thank you so much for that. Before we move to the counselors that wish to speak, I'm just going to move this item. I think that we didn't make a motion. Counselor Sena, I think that's a second. Thank you so much. And so I'm going to move to our counselors that may wish to speak. Counselor Sena, Counselor Benton, and Counselor Davis.
Thank you, Madam President. That was one of the issues. I don't think that motion was made, so I wanted to be sure to do that and second it. But I just want to acknowledge and really thank Ms. Begay and Terry Sloan for all of the work. I think that this resolution states it's just a step towards that reconciliation and healing. And I know that we most recently had Orange Shirt Day, recognizing that many of our Indigenous students throughout our city, throughout our state, throughout our nation, and around the world of finding these burial sites at these boarding schools and how we proceed forward with that step of healing. And I know that it doesn't exactly bring justice to what has occurred, but I think it's important that we do acknowledge what has happened and the trauma that continues to be experienced by our Indigenous communities. And you know, the ongoing work that we need to do as a city in addressing the murdered and missing Indigenous women that continue on throughout the city, throughout the nation. And really, my comment is to make sure that I am really appreciative that this is, of course, Native-led. And that really, for me, it's an honor and privilege to carry this resolution, because I know that a lot of the work is going to be done by our Indigenous communities towards that step of healing. And of course, our city is just as a partner to that. And just recognizing, you know, the hard work that you've done, Ms. Begay, that of course, I'm sure that this is not easy, in understanding a lot of the history of our own city and of this park. And I'm glad that we're making those steps and that we're making really the considerations and the thoughtfulness when it comes to this process. So I just want to say thank you, and to also to Terry Sloan, and of course the commission for doing this work in understanding who's been there. But we know that, of course, this is just one step that, you know, we're going to continue to need to investigate and put our efforts towards searching for all of the students, as well as the murdered and missing Indigenous women.
Thank you, Counselor Sena. We will move on to Counselor Benton.
Thank you, Madam President. And yeah, without question, we, I think, have been careful to make it clear that we will be guided by the Indigenous tribes and pueblos and nations who all of this was their land, and we recognize that, we honor that. I did have a quick question for Ms. Begay. I think I heard you correctly to say that we've got a pretty good idea what the original boundaries were, and that a priority would be to get this off limits to recreation. I think, you know, I don't purport to say how we should move forward, but I would be happy to help to get that done. You know, if we know the boundary plus some room for error to how to go ahead and close this off to recreation, I would support doing that as soon as possible, again, with the guidance of our Native American Indigenous forebears.
Thank you. Really appreciate that.
Counselor Benton, thank you for that. Counselor Davis.
Thanks, Madam President. Yeah, and I just want to echo those sentiments. I know we have a little more time tonight because we don't have a big agenda, but I do appreciate that this is something we ought to revisit, and somehow or another we ought to figure out how it is, and looking back at the city's past, that we somehow forgot this piece of our history. And I don't think it was, I'm certain it wasn't deliberate, but it's been an interesting journey for us, both about how the city, how we choose to respond and engage, and how we participate. And Ms. Begay, thank you so much for giving us that information. I know that we've heard from state legislators and folks at the county as well, who are all represent different parts of our community who have offered to participate in that process. And we've also heard from different members of the Native American community who haven't participated in our formal processes, as you know, because you were at that event, that also feel a deep connection to this and the story behind it. And so I want to say thank you to the administration for setting up that event last weekend to invite folks in. I think that was an excellent first step, but I hope that we'll continue to be public in our process and include more and more people so that this is not just a city program and process. This is important on a national and an international scale with the stories that we're learning about these Indian schools. And, I don't have that history, but I understand how important history is. And having heard enough of these stories, I would love to see us come up with a way to do some storytelling and some history making and preservation from some of those oral histories that we're starting to lose from people who were in those schools. And as some of you know, one of the reporters in the paper that full disclosure, I'm the publisher of, but really got to sit down and talk to some people in Albuquerque who had been at that school and told us some amazing stories about horrible situations, but also opportunities that they took away from it. And so I'd love to see us figure out how to make an oral history project to go along with it so that we can tell the next generation what it is that's buried in that park and why it mattered so much. So thank you all for starting that process, and I look forward to those updates.
Thank you, Councilor Davis. Any other councilors wish to speak? I would just like to say, Ms. Begay, thank you to all of the individuals who brought this forward to us. It is really an honor to be a part of this tonight and, to be one of the sponsors regarding this, and to the administration for requesting that this be on our agenda. It's really important that it is rising to the level of importance that it is. It really is kind of a first step for us as a city to move forward toward healing, and also to be inclusive of all of our communities in Albuquerque, and to understand some of the pain that, people have lived with over the years of not knowing. And I just also want to recognize Councilor Pena, because the park that's in her district of women that were murdered, and I think those things have helped bring some of these things to the sort of the top, rise to the top, so that our community does see this, and we all are part of it, and that really is a first step toward healing. So unless there's anyone else that would like to speak, I think we're going to go ahead and move to a vote. We have a motion and a second. Ms. Ortega.
Councilor Bassan.
Yes.
Councilor Benton.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Gibson.
Yes.
Councilor Jones. Councilor
Yes.
Jones. Thank
Yes.
you. Councilor Pena.
Yes.
Councilor Sena.
Yes.
Councilor Borrego.
Yes.
8-0.
Thank you, councilors. That was an honor to be a part of that. Our next city council meeting will be on October the 18th, and there be no further business before the city council. This meeting is adjourned. Good night, councilors. Good night to the public.